Chapter 442. Testing soul power. The eldest prince stood up with difficulty and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He glared at Ningyu and said viciously, "What did you do to me? Why did I feel dazed for a moment? Did you feel dazed just now?" Ningyu's reaction was a little exaggerated when he heard the eldest prince's words. His eyes widened as he said in shock, "Why didn't I know?" "I know." Immediately, Ningyu's eyes lit up and he said in a clear voice, "You must have done something you shouldn't have done yesterday. In other words, you've overindulged in your desires." Ningyu's voice was so loud that even the passers-by on the street stopped and stared at Tianyuan Tower, wanting to see what was going on inside. Fut. As for the many cultivators in Tianyuan Tower, they could not help but laugh. The more he indulged in lust, the more he could think. Damn it. The eldest prince's face was livid. He wanted nothing more than to kill Ningyu immediately. "If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave." Ningyu shrugged and walked towards the third floor. The eldest prince trembled with anger as he watched Ningyu's back, but there was nothing he could do. He had not lost his rationality. Before he understood why he had lost contact with his sea of consciousness, he did not dare to act rashly. Ningyu was very fast and arrived outside the room where Lu Wei and the others were in no time. However, Ningyu did not enter the room immediately. Instead, he stopped in front of the door. "Ningyu, why aren't you going in?" Fengzi asked in confusion when he saw Ningyu stop. "There's a yin-yang realm cultivator inside," Ningyu said solemnly. Ningyu was very shocked because he had only discovered a yin-yang realm cultivator when he arrived at the room. In other words, the yin-yang realm cultivator in the room had a very unique method of concealing his aura. Yin-yang realm cultivator? Fengzi's heart went cold when he heard this, and he hurriedly displayed his perception. After a while, Fengzi retracted his perception, and a serious expression appeared on his face. "Ningyu, step back. I'll open the door." After pondering for a moment, Fengzi said, "If I encounter any danger, leave immediately." What kind of joke is this? The cultivator inside is at the peak of the initial yin-yang realm. With your strength, if you don't use your trump card, you won't even be able to last one move against him. Shaking his head, Ningyu took a step forward and arrived at the door. "Unrelated people, leave immediately." However, before Ningyu's hand could touch the door, a berating voice rang out from inside. "Senior, I am acquainted with the cultivator inside. May I know if it is possible to open the door?" Ningyu frowned slightly. However, he did not barge in. Instead, he asked. "It's Ningyu." Inside the room, when Lu Wei heard Ningyu's voice, her face lit up with joy as she shouted, "Don't make a fuss. I also know it's Ningyu." Xiao Yu was much calmer, but her face also revealed a look of surprise. "It seems like he won't let Ningyu in." Xikong Ling pointed at the yin-yang realm cultivator in front of the door and said in a low voice, "If you don't speak, no one will think you're mute." Xiao Yu said angrily, "If you have the ability, chase the door god away." "All right, pretend I didn't say anything." Helpless, Xikong Ling could only choose to shut up. Actually, Xikong Ling was right. The yin-yang realm cultivator's tone was a little cold as he shouted, "Unrelated people, leave immediately. Without the Emperor's written order, I won't open the door." The Emperor's written order? Outside the room, Ningyu had a puzzled look on his face. Could it be that he needed the Emperor's permission to meet with Lu Wei and the others? Thinking of this, Ningyu's face became very ugly. Thinking of this, the Emperor had clearly grasped his weakness. "Where is the Emperor?" Taking a deep breath, Ningyu said in a deep voice. "Impudent. Where is the Emperor? Is that something you can ask?" The yin-yang realm cultivator in the room said coldly, "If you know what's good for you, leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. What if I insist on going in?" Ningyu's tone also became cold as he said. Ningyu was very clear that the Emperor invited Lu Wei and the others over to force him to come over. There was no reason to not let him see Lu Wei after coming here. There was most likely only one purpose for the Emperor to do this. That was to test his true strength. First, it was Elder Tan, then Zhu Jianming, followed by Zhong Tianwen, the eldest prince. These cultivators did not defeat him, so it was very likely that the yin-yang realm cultivators would make a move next. If I didn't guess wrongly, the Emperor should also be in Qianyuan Tower. Ningyu's brows were tightly knitted as his gaze slowly swept across every room on the 3rd floor. Subsequently, Ningyu shifted his gaze from the 3rd floor to the 4th floor. Qianyuan Tower had a total of 4 floors. The first 3 floors had more rooms, but when it came to the 4th floor, there were only 3 rooms. Ningyu's gaze paused on the first 2 rooms for a second and the last room for 2 seconds. He discovered me. There were a total of 2 people in the last room. A middle-aged man and an old man. If Ningyu was here, he would definitely discover that he knew the old man. It was Elder Tan who sparred with him not long ago. The middle-aged man's brows slightly raised as he said indifferently, "Elder Tan, the protective barrier you set up doesn't seem to be very effective." Elder Tan looked a little awkward. "I'm not blaming you. After all, Ningyu is very strong. It's understandable that he could see through your protective barrier." The middle-aged man waved his hand, indicating for Elder Tan to not mind. "Tell Lian Bin to test Ningyu's soul force. I want to know the exact strength of Ningyu's soul force." "Yes," Elder Tan responded before taking out a crystal ball and engraving a few lines of words on it. At the same time, in a room on the 3rd floor of Qianyuan Tower, Lian Bin touched his chest and nodded his head slightly. Creak. In the next moment, Lian Bin opened the door. However, when Lu Wei and the rest wanted to come out, Lian Bin once again slammed the door shut. "Ningyu, if you can withstand the pressure of my soul force, I'll let you enter the room," Lian Bin said emotionlessly. "Withstand the pressure of your soul force?" Ningyu was slightly stunned before he looked at the yin-yang stage martial artist before him. The strength of an early stage 6th grade soul force. Realizing that the martial artist before him only had an early stage 6th grade soul force, Ningyu was slightly relieved. An early stage 6th grade soul force couldn't force him to use all his soul force. "I can withstand the pressure of your soul force, but before that, I have a question for you." Ningyu opened his mouth and a soft voice rang in Lian Bin's ears. "Is His Majesty in Qianyuan Tower?" Lian Bin's expression changed slightly when he heard the voice, and he couldn't help but regard Ningyu more highly. Ningyu had just used a spiritual voice transmission. Chapter 443. Lian Bin. "Ningyu, don't you think you're asking too much?" Lian Bin did not answer Ningyu's question. Instead, he said coldly, "As long as you can withstand my soul force pressure, then everything is negotiable. If you can't, then I can only apologize to you and invite you out of Qianyuan Tower. How long you resist is considered a success." Ningyu did not beat around the bush and asked directly, "Do you want to endure for 10 minutes or half an hour? You sure talk big. As long as you can endure for 3 minutes, I'll consider it your win." As soon as the word win was said, Lian Bin's body trembled. Then, all his soul force gushed out and pressed down on Ningyu without restraint. Lian Bin's soul force had reached the early stage of 6th grade. The method he used to test Ningyu's soul force was very simple. If Ningyu could endure for a minute, it meant that Ningyu's soul force had reached the early stage of 5th grade. If he could endure for 2 minutes, it meant that his soul force had reached the middle stage of 5th grade. If he could endure for 3 minutes, it meant that his soul force had reached the late stage of 5th grade. As for lasting for more than 3 minutes, Lian Bin did not think about it. Because a martial artist who could endure for more than 3 minutes under his soul force pressure must have reached the peak of 5th grade at the very least. Ningyu was so young. In Lian Bin's opinion, it was impossible for his soul force to reach the peak of 5th grade. Soul force of 6th grade, facing the soul force that was pressing down on him, Ningyu's expression did not change. His soul force gushed out and formed a soul force shield in front of him. Kai. Lian Bin's soul force met the shield and stopped on the spot, unable to move forward. "Break!" Lian Bin shouted in a low voice, controlling his soul force to crazily smash into Ningyu's soul force protection shield. However, Ningyu's soul force shield was unusually strong. No matter how Lian Bin attacked, it did not budge at all. In the blink of an eye, 1 minute passed. Ningyu stood on the spot. The soul force shield in front of him was very strong. Not even a crack appeared. 2 minutes passed. Ning Yu crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at Lian Bin with interest. Could it be that his soul power has reached the late stage of 5th grade? As time passed, Lian Bin's expression became more and more solemn, but he could still maintain his composure. Voila! However, when the 3rd minute passed, Lian Bin's expression finally changed, and an incredulous look appeared on his face. Ning Yu was able to withstand the pressure of his soul power for 3 minutes, which meant that Ning Yu's soul power had probably reached the peak of level 5. At such a young age, the strength of his soul energy had already reached peak rank 5. This talent was truly terrifying. Even Dan Chunzi, the great Xia Kingdom's Dan Chunzi, when he was at Ning Yu's age, his soul force hadn't reached the peak of the 5th grade. His Majesty wants me to test the true strength of Ning Yu's soul. Since that's the case, I want to see how long Ning Yu can last. Lian Bin gritted his teeth. Pardon me for asking. At this moment, Ning Yu's voice slowly rang out, I've already endured for 3 minutes. Does that count as my win? Lian Bin was slightly stunned, and an awkward expression appeared on his face. He did say that as long as Ning Yu could last for 3 minutes, it would count as Ning Yu's win. Right now, he was completely breaking his promise. Ning Yu, you asked me a question just now. If you can last for 10 minutes under the pressure of my soul power, I can tell you if His Majesty is in the Qianyuan restaurant. Lian Bin's expression was a little ugly as he said in a low voice. I don't care. 10 minutes it is. It doesn't affect me much. Ning Yu shrugged, looking indifferent. Shameless boasting. With a cold snort, not only did Lian Bin unleash all the soul power in his body, he even used his Yuan Qi. Combining Yuan Qi and soul power, he strived to break through Ning Yu's soul power barrier as soon as possible. His even unleashing his Yuan Qi, Ning Yu's perception was very strong, and he had sensed something the moment Lian Bin unleashed his Yuan Qi. However, Ning Yu was least afraid of the pressure of Yuan Qi. With the Yuan Qi in his 4 illusory golden cores, even Lian Bin, who was at the peak of early-stage yin-yang realm, might not be able to get the upper hand. Therefore, when Lian Bin unleashed his Yuan Qi, the Yuan Qi in Ning Yu's sea of consciousness quietly surged and entered the soul power barrier in front of him through his palm. As both of them had used their Yuan Qi and soul power, Ning Yu and Lian Bin were in a deadlock for a moment. I didn't expect Ning Yu's soul power to be so strong, Ren Xiangtian said solemnly as he locked his gaze on Ning Yu on the 3rd floor of the Qianyuan restaurant. Ren Xiangtian was a peerless genius in the Alchemy Union, and the strength of his soul power was very strong. Naturally, he could sense the strength of Lian Bin's early-stage 6th grade soul power. Although Ning Yu's soul power was a little vague, Ren Xiangtian could basically determine that Ning Yu's soul power was very strong. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to last so long under the pressure of Lian Bin's powerful soul power. Old Tan, you seem to have mentioned that Ning Yu's Yuan Qi is abnormally vigorous, the middle-aged man on the 4th floor of the Qianyuan restaurant said indifferently. On the 4th floor of the Qianyuan tower, the middle-aged man said indifferently, now that his soul force is so powerful, he's the best candidate for the royal family selection. Your Majesty, didn't you say that you want Ning Yu and the 3rd prince to go together? Old Tan frowned. Hihi, I'm just saying. Don't take it seriously. Before Old Tan could finish his sentence, the middle-aged man waved his hand and smiled. It's very difficult for Lian Bin to test the strength of Ning Yu's soul power. Go and prepare. We'll start the selection in half an hour. Understood. Nodding his head, Old Tan slowly left the room. Dong. Dong. After Old Tan left, the middle-aged man rapped his fingers on the table and murmured, why isn't such a genius born in the royal family? Instead, Danwu College beat us to it. At the same time, in front of Lu Wei's room on the 3rd floor of Qianyuan Tower, Lian Bin's expression was extremely ugly. Even if he executed his primordial qi, he couldn't break Ning Yu's soul power barrier. On the contrary, Ning Yu seemed to be about to counterattack. Fortunately, 10 minutes passed just as Ning Yu was about to counterattack. Lian Bin's expression was extremely helpless. Left with no choice, he could only withdraw his soul power and primordial qi back into his body. Who? Sensing Lian Bin withdrawing his soul power and primordial qi, Ning Yu let out a long sigh of relief. His tense nerves relaxed a little. 10 minutes have passed. Ningyu stared at Lian Bin. His meaning was self-evident. All right, I'll tell you. Lian Bin was extremely unwilling, but he still whispered in Ningyu's ear, His Majesty is on the 4th floor of Chenyuan Tower. Sure. After saying that, Lian Bin's figure flashed and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Looking at Lian Bin's disappearing figure, Ningyu took a step forward and pushed the door with both hands. It's indeed as I guessed. He should be in the 3rd room on the 4th floor. Creak. In the next instant, the door was pushed open. Ningyu, I knew that you would be able to chase away that door god. Ningyu, it's great that you could come. Chapter 444. The Yuan Room 3 voices sounded in Ningyu's ears the moment he opened the door. No need to think, it was Xikong Ling, Lu Wei, and Xiao Yu. Speak inside. Ningyu did not linger in front of the door, but walked into the room. As for Feng Zi, he followed closely behind Ningyu, closing the door behind him. After entering the room, Ningyu got straight to the point, asking, Why are you guys at the Chenyuan Tower? Who brought you here? It's that door god just now. Xiao Yu was the first to speak. A day ago, we were all at Xikong Ling's house, but who would have thought that door god would directly barge in and bring the 3 of us to the Chenyuan Tower? Door god. That yin-yang stage early stage martial artist. Ningyu was first taken aback, then said, His strength is not weak, the 3 of you definitely can't stop him. Ningyu, this is all my fault, I couldn't. Xikong Ling said somewhat awkwardly. This is not your fault. Ningyu interrupted Xikong Ling's words, asking, Do you know why that martial artist brought you to the Chenyuan Tower? I'm not sure about this. Xikong Ling shook his head, saying, After we came to the Chenyuan Tower, this room has not been opened, until you came. Is that so? Ningyu's brows knitted tightly, falling into contemplation. Logically speaking, the Emperor definitely had a purpose for inviting Xikong Ling and the rest to the Chenyuan Tower, and it was most likely for him. However, there was one point that Ningyu was very puzzled about. If it was just to lure him, the Emperor did not need to go through so much trouble. From this, it could be seen that the Emperor must have another purpose. Thinking up to here, Ningyu's expression was somewhat solemn, saying in a deep voice, Lu Wei, after returning to the capital, did you return to Snow Domain Pavilion? Snow Domain Pavilion has long been occupied by a mysterious force. How could I let Lu Wei return? Before Lu Wei could speak, Xiao Yu said with mild anger. Back when Danwu College was recruiting students, Ningyu had witnessed Xiao Yu's shrewdness. Compared to when she was at her peak, Xiao Yu was obviously much more restrained. After we leave the Chenyuan Tower, you should go to the Sacred Institute of Danwu College for a few days. I'll go to the Snow Pavilion to explore. After a brief pause, Ningyu said, No matter how powerful His Majesty is, it's impossible for him to go to the Sacred Institute of Danwu College to capture people. Ningyu, I want to go with you. Hearing Ningyu's words, Lu Wei hurriedly said. This time, I'm only going to scout around. I might run into danger. You go to Danwu College with Xiao Yu and the others first. Ningyu's tone was unquestionable as he said, I'll come back to you after I'm done scouting around. All right. Lu Wei pouted and said helplessly. Although Lu Wei's cultivation was not high, her IQ was not low. She knew that Ningyu was doing this for her own good. After all, her cultivation was only at the Xiantian realm. If she went to the Snow Pavilion with Ningyu, she would not be of any help at all. She would only cause trouble. Right, I don't seem to have seen the 6th Prince Ouyang Yuan in the Chenyuan Tower. Do you know where he went? Suddenly, Ningyu seemed to have thought of something and asked. The Chenyuan Tower was the 6th Prince's property. There was no reason for him not to be there. His Majesty has given the 6th Prince and the 3rd Prince a mission. Sai Kongling obviously knew where the 6th Prince went. He explained, recently, 2 peak 5th rank demonic beasts appeared in the Imperial hunting ground. Their strength is comparable to a half-step yin-yang realm martial artist. His Majesty has sent them to hunt the demonic beasts. Whoever completes the mission first can make a request to him at this banquet. As long as the request is not too excessive, he can agree to it unconditionally. Hearing this, Ningyu's heart shuddered. Hunt a peak 5th rank demonic beast and agree to a request unconditionally? The current emperor was too bold. One must know that the first prince did not participate in this. Could the emperor be sending a message to the outside world to make the first prince the crown prince? Thinking of this, Ningyu's face turned slightly ugly. He and the first prince were mortal enemies. If the first prince became the crown prince and successfully ascended to the throne as the emperor, he would suffer a disaster. Swoosh, swoosh. Suddenly, two figures dashed out from the Chenyuan Tower and landed in the lobby in the blink of an eye. Bang! As soon as the two figures appeared, they instantly exchanged blows. However, they separated as soon as they came into contact, standing on both sides of the lobby. The 6th prince and the 3rd prince are back at the same time. At the same time? Didn't you notice that the 6th prince is slightly faster than the 3rd prince by a second? Is 1 second fast? At best, they can only be considered to be on par. The two figures were none other than the 3rd prince and the 6th prince. At this moment, they were holding a demonic beast's head in their hands. When the two demonic beasts were alive, they were clearly peak 5th rank demonic beasts with strength comparable to half-step yin-yang rel. Third brother, how about you win this time? The 6th prince Ouyang Yuan raised his brows and said indifferently, you can make a request in front of father later. Humph. If I win, I win. If I lose, I lose. I, Ouyang Hai, can afford to lose. The 3rd prince Ouyang Hai coldly snorted. Hehe, since third brother is so modest, it would be impolite of me to refuse. Ouyang Yuan laughed. 6th brother, you are only at the peak of the true martial realm. To be able to kill a peak 5th rank demonic beast, you must have used a lot of trump cards, right? Ouyang Hai said with a sinister smile. Ouyang Yuan was only at the peak of the true martial realm. With his strength, it would be difficult for him to defeat a peak 5th rank demonic beast, let alone kill one. You're not much better off. You used up a lot of the trump cards you prepared to go to West Mountain City to kill a peak 5th rank demonic beast. Ouyang Hai coldly said, be careful when you go to West Mountain City tomorrow. Don't encounter bandits and get killed. I don't need your concern when I go to West Mountain City. You should worry about your own matters. Ouyang Hai said in a dark voice, once I leave the capital, big brother will definitely not let me off. Third brother, isn't it a little unkind to speak ill of me behind my back? Before Ouyang Hai's voice faded, a figure slowly walked down from the 3rd floor. The figure stopped in front of Ouyang Hai and stared at him as he said with a smile, it is a joyous occasion that you and 6th brother succeeded in killing demonic beasts. Don't ruin the harmony because of this. Big brother, don't say it without feeling pain. Seeing the 1st prince appear, Ouyang Hai's tone was cold as he said, if I am not wrong, Ningyu should have already arrived at Chenyuan restaurant. I wonder if you have sparred with him? At the mention of Ningyu, the 1st prince's face instantly darkened. Ouyang Hai was really touching a sore spot. He had just been defeated by Ningyu, and Ouyang Hai was already mocking him. It was true that an aunt could endure, but an uncle could not. Cough cough. At this moment, 2 dry coughs rang out from the 4th floor of Chenyuan restaurant. Soon after, an old man slowly appeared in everyone's line of sight. This old man was Old Tan. Old Tan's gaze first scanned the entire Chenyuan restaurant, before he said in a clear voice, all martial artists that I personally invite are to go to the 2nd Yuan room. Chapter 445. 2 types of tests crash. As Elder Tan's voice fell, the Chenyuan Tower became noisy. All the martial artists personally invited by Elder Tan left their rooms and headed for the 2nd Yuan room on the 4th floor. The martial artists invited by Elder Tan were at least at the early Yuan core stage. Any one of them was a well-known figure in the capital. Of course, Ningyu, a late-stage true martial realm martial artist, was an exception. As for the rest of the martial artists, they headed for the 3rd Yuan room. Lu Wei, you guys weren't invited by Elder Tan, right? Ningyu paced up and down in the room while a wisp of a solemn expression appeared on his face. He said, with your strengths, you might encounter danger even if you go to room 3. Just now, Ningyu had quietly released his perception and discovered that the martial artists who entered the 3rd Yuan room were mostly at the peak of the true martial realm, and there were even a few who had reached the early Yuan course day. Although Xikong Ling and Xiao Yu had entered Danwu College's Sacred Institute and were genius martial artists, which martial artist invited by the emperor to the Qianyuan Tower was weak? After pondering for a moment, Ningyu said, Fengzi, you go with Xikong Ling and the others to the third Yuan room. You must ensure their safety. Fengzi's strength was not weak. Ningyu felt more at ease letting Fengzi protect Xikong Ling and the others. Nodding, Fengzi said, no problem. As long as I'm here, I guarantee they won't encounter danger. You. Hearing Fengzi's words, Xiao Yu's eyebrows twitched in disbelief. In the next instant, Xiao Yu's figure flashed, and a fist carried a violent gust of wind as it rumbled towards Fengzi. Bang! Facing such a swift and fierce attack from Xiao Yu, Fengzi stood in place without moving. He raised his right hand and unavoidably collided with Xiao Yu's fist. After one move, Fengzi still stood in place without moving. On the other hand, Xiao Yu retreated to the edge of the room before stabilizing her figure. You. Being at a disadvantage, Xiao Yu's face was filled with indignation. However, just when she wanted to make another move, Ningyu's voice resounded, don't make a fuss. This matter is settled. Fengzi will go with all of you to the third Yuan room. Creak. Then, Ningyu pushed open the door and walked out. By the way, don't act rashly if you encounter any problems. Listen to Fengzi's arrangements for everything. As soon as he stepped out of the door, Ningyu stopped and turned around. Remember this, I won't offend those who don't offend me, but if someone offends me, at this point, Ningyu paused for a moment and then said coldly, if you can win, then fight. If you can't, then call me. After saying this, Ningyu left the room without looking back, leaving behind a dumbfounded Sai Kongling and the others. Ningyu was too arrogant. If he could win, then fight. If he couldn't, then call him. A thought suddenly arose in the minds of Sai Kongling and the others. If Ningyu couldn't win, then he would probably run. If Ningyu knew what Sai Kongling and the others were thinking, he would definitely be very comforted. If he couldn't win and didn't run, wouldn't that be seeking his own death? There were a total of 3 rooms on the 4th floor of Qianyuan restaurant. They were the 3rd Yuan room, the 2nd Yuan room, and the 1st Yuan room. Before long, Ningyu arrived at the door of the 2nd Yuan room. Ningyu didn't hesitate and directly entered the room. Entering the room, Ningyu discovered that there were a total of 3 or 4 martial artists inside. Their cultivation ranged from the early to the late Yuan core stage. There was even a peak Yuan core martial artist. Due to Ningyu's earlier strong performance, these martial artists all smiled at Ningyu when they saw Ningyu enter. Of course, the peak Yuan core martial artist's expression was indifferent, and he didn't even bat an eyelid. Ningyu didn't mind. He found a random chair and sat down, closing his eyes to rest. Swish. Swish. Not long after Ningyu sat down, 2 figures flashed by and entered the room. After these 2 ancient martial art practitioners entered, even the peak primal core ancient martial art practitioner could not help but raise his head to take a look, but very quickly looked away. Because these 2 martial artists were the 3rd prince, Ouyang Hai, and the 6th prince, Ouyang Yuan. Subsequently, the eldest prince, Zhong Tianwen, and the first young master of the black market, Zhu Jianming, all entered the room. Swish. Following that, Ren Xiangtian entered the room. Huh. Seeing Ren Xiangtian, the peak Yuan core martial artist in the room couldn't help but raise an eyebrow, and his lips curled into an evil smile. Ningyu, I heard that you're from the Tianxian City Alchemy Union and will be representing them in the alchemy competition this time? Ren Xiangtian's gaze swept across the room and finally landed on Ningyu. Moving his feet, Ren Xiangtian came to stand in front of Ningyu and said, there are still 7 to 8 days until the alchemy competition. I look forward to fighting with you then. You are. Ningyu frowned slightly and asked doubtfully. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Ren Xiangtian, and I'm from the capital's Alchemy Union, Ren Xiangtian said as he slapped his forehead. We'll talk about it when the time comes. If there are no accidents, I will definitely participate in the alchemy competition, Ningyu said lightly. Ha ha ha. Just then, a loud laugh sounded from outside the door. The person had not arrived, but the voice came first. Old Tan. The martial artist who entered the room was Old Tan. All of you must be wondering why His Majesty has summoned all of you to the Tianyuan Inn. After laughing, Old Tan said in a clear voice, His Majesty wants to choose 2 martial artists among you. Whoever is chosen can enter the ice manor unconditionally to cultivate for a day and night. Swish. Hearing Old Tan's words, the martial artists in the room were still rather rational and did not show any particular impulsive behavior. However, everyone had a trace of solemnity on their faces. In the Great Xia Kingdom, there were 3 sacred cultivation grounds, and the ice manor was one of them. It was already extremely difficult for the prodigies of the imperial family to enter the ice manor to cultivate for 2 hours, not to mention cultivating for a day and night. Very well. I won't say anything unnecessary. Next, I'll introduce some of the rules of the test. Old Tan was very satisfied with everyone's reaction and continued, the test is divided into 2 aspects, the martial arts test and the alchemy test. Old Tan, what is the martial arts test and what is the alchemy test? The first prince asked. Old Tan smiled and said, the so-called martial arts test is where you fight in pairs. Whoever can fight to the end will be the final winner. As for the alchemy test, it is naturally a competition of alchemy. Old Tan continued, you can choose the martial arts test or the alchemy test. You can even choose both, but the prerequisite is that you have the ability. Do I have to participate in these 2 tests? Ningyu frowned slightly and said without batting an eyelid, if I don't participate in either test, will there be any impact? Don't participate in either test. Old Tan was slightly startled. It was obvious that he was very doubtful about this request of Ningyu. The winner could unconditionally enter the cold ice mansion to cultivate for a day and a night. Ningyu was currently in the late stage of the true martial realm, but if he cultivated in the cold ice mansion for a day, he could even reach the peak of the true martial realm. What was he thinking? Why didn't he want to participate in the test? Chapter 446. Competing in alchemy. Ningyu glanced at Zhong Tianwen from the corner of his eye and ignored him. Instead, he nodded at Elder Tan and said, whether it's the martial arts assessment or the alchemy assessment, I don't want to participate. I'm afraid you can't. This assessment was personally requested by His Majesty. If you don't agree, you'll be committing the crime of deceiving the Emperor. Elder Tan frowned and said, you've already angered His Majesty by not being in the capital previously. If you choose to withdraw this time, the consequences will be obvious. That's right. If it wasn't for His Majesty's magnanimity, he would have wiped out your entire family. Zhong Tianwen echoed. Zhong Tianwen, can I ask you a question? Suddenly, Ningyu came before Zhong Tianwen and asked. Zhong Tianwen was stunned, not knowing what Ningyu was up to. What question? Although Zhong Tianwen was puzzled, he still asked. Are you stupid? Ningyu shrugged and said indifferently. What? When Ningyu said that, Zhong Tianwen's eyes widened and his face was filled with disbelief. Very quickly, his face darkened completely. Ningyu called him a fool in front of so many people. It was obvious that he was not giving him face and did not take him seriously. Ningyu, I want to challenge you, Zhong Tianwen said angrily. However, Zhong Tianwen recalled how he was defeated by Ningyu and quickly changed the topic. I'm challenging you in alchemy. Do you dare to accept it? Competing in alchemy? Ningyu raised his brows and then raised his right hand. He shook his index finger and said, you're still lacking. You're not qualified. Ningyu, you're too arrogant. Zhong Tianwen is a mid-stage 5th grade alchemy master. How dare you say that he's not qualified? At this moment, the eldest prince said in a deep voice, you're the one who's not qualified, right? I don't need you to judge whether I'm qualified or not. If you're not convinced, you can give it a try. Ningyu rolled his eyes and instantly changed his mind. He said, I can accept this challenge, but I have a request. What request? Zhong Tianwen asked in a deep voice. It's very simple. If I defeat you in alchemy, you and the first prince will have to leave the Heaven Yuan building, Ningyu said without batting an eyelid. The first prince was a strong contender for the position of crown prince. If he performed well this time, then the 6th prince would lose his chance. As the saying goes, the enemy of an enemy is a friend. Moreover, Ningyu and Ouyou Yongyuan's relationship was not very bad. It would not be wrong to help Ouyou Yongyuan at this time. As expected, when Ningyu said this, Ouyou Yongyuan quietly nodded at Ningyu, his meaning self-evident. This, Ningyu's request, was a little special, and Zhong Tianwen could not decide on his own. For a moment, he was in a dilemma, and shifted his gaze to the first prince. The first prince's expression was somewhat ugly. Although he thought highly of Zhong Tianwen, a horse would stumble as well. If Zhong Tianwen lost, would he really have to leave the Heaven Yuan building? Perhaps sensing the first prince's worry, Ningyu continued, "First prince, if you're afraid that Zhong Tianwen will lose to me, you can also personally take part." "Me too." The first prince frowned. "That's right. I will refine 2 furnaces of pills, while you and Zhong Tianwen will each refine 1 furnace. As long as the 2 of you succeed before me, it will be your victory." Ningyu explained, "On the contrary, if I refine 2 furnaces of pills before the 2 of you, then regretfully, I'll have to ask you to leave the Heaven Yuan building." Shameless boasting. Arrogant. The first prince and Zhong Tianwen berated the moment Ningyu's words rang out. Even Old Tan and Ren Xiangtian felt that Ningyu was very arrogant. In the second Yuan room, only one person saw Ningyu in a different light and felt that Ningyu had the ability to do so. This person was the peak primal core martial artist. He lifted his head to look at Ningyu and mumbled, "His soul energy is very strong, even comparable to mine. What an interesting kid. Why, are you guys afraid now?" Ningyu pursed his lips and said lightly, "Don't boast in the future, lest others look down on you." "Me? Who says we don't dare? Today, I'd like to see if you have the right to be arrogant." The first prince snorted and said, "What kind of pills do you want to refine? 4th grade pills or 5th grade pills? I don't care. Your soul energy is only at the beginning stage of 4th grade. In my opinion, you should refine 4th grade pills," Ningyu said. "Alright, let's refine the true martial pill." The first prince turned to Old Tan and said, "Old Tan, we want to refine the true martial pill, please." "Wait a moment, I'll go prepare the herbs." Old Tan interrupted the first prince and his palm tore through the air and disappeared instantly. A moment later, Old Tan returned to the room with a storage bag in his hand. Swish, 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 swish. Old Tan flicked his wrist and 4 sets of herbs appeared on the table. "These are 4 sets of herbs for refining the true martial pill. You guys will refine the pill here and I'll be the judge," Old Tan said in a clear voice. "Get ready first. We'll start refining the true martial pill in 5 minutes." Zhong Tianwen glared fiercely at Ningyu, then reached into his robe and took out a white pill furnace. Whoosh! The moment Zhong Tianwen took out the white cauldron, the martial artists in the second Yuan room all looked shocked. "White demon cauldron. Zhong Tianwen has a white demon cauldron. This is unbelievable. The white demon cauldron is ranked 55th on the Earth list of cauldrons. It's extremely precious." With Zhong Tianwen's status as a 5th grade alchemist and the white demon cauldron, he'll be able to refine the true martial pill in 15 minutes at most. The envious comments from the surrounding martial artists made Zhong Tianwen raise his eyebrows and look at Ningyu. However, when he saw that Ningyu didn't even look at him, he scoffed and picked up a set of herbs on the table, preparing to refine the pill. On the other side, the first prince flicked his sleeve and a small cauldron appeared in his hand. Then, he slowly injected his soul power into the cauldron. As he injected his soul power, the cauldron gradually grew until it was the same size as Zhong Tianwen's white demon cauldron. Scorpion cauldron. Looking at the cauldron in the first prince's hand, the martial artists in the rooms were shocked again. This time, even the martial arts practitioners at the peak of the primal core stage were shocked. The Scorpion Cauldron was ranked 30th on the list of cauldrons. Although the first prince's soul power was only at the beginning stage of 4th grade, with the Scorpion Cauldron, he might even be able to refine the true martial pill before Zhong Tianwen. Whoosh! Just like Zhong Tianwen, the first prince picked up a set of herbs on the table and retreated to the side. Zhong Tianwen and the first prince both took out their cauldrons, and the crowd turned their attention to Ningyu, wanting to see what grade Ningyu's cauldron was. After all, Ningyu had spoken arrogantly, so his cauldron should also be on the list of cauldrons, right? Ningyu ignored the gazes from the surrounding cultivators and walked over to the sixth prince, Ouyang Yuan. As soon as Ningyu opened his mouth, the surrounding martial artists were dumbfounded. Chapter 447. Everyone is shocked. Sixth prince, please lend me an alchemy cauldron. As soon as Ningyu said this, everyone in VIP booth 2, including Elder Tan and the peak primal core warrior, had their mouths agape. Their eyes were filled with incredulity. How come Ningyu didn't even have an alchemy cauldron? What was the difference between an alchemist without an alchemy cauldron and a swordsman without a sword? Ha ha ha. Zhong Tianwen was the first to lose it. He guffawed and said, "You don't even have an alchemy cauldron and you're dreaming of making the true martial pill? If you know what's good for you, you'd better admit defeat before you lose. Zhong Tianwen, remember not to underestimate anyone." The eldest prince was much calmer. He waved at Zhong Tianwen and said, "Who knows, he might be able to make the true martial pill without an alchemy cauldron." Yes, yes, yes. Zhong Tianwen's reaction was a little exaggerated. He smiled and said, "Don't underestimate anyone. What is Ningyu up to?" Other than the eldest prince and Zhong Tianwen, Ren Xiangtian was also puzzled. Without an alchemy cauldron, the speed of making the true martial pill will drop by at least 30%. As the genius of the alchemy union, Ren Xiangtian knew the importance of having an alchemy cauldron. It could be said that if he changed his alchemy cauldron to make the true martial pill, his speed would drop as well. Borrowing an alchemy cauldron? Haha, what an interesting kid. The peak primal core warrior smiled and said, "I'm looking forward to sparring with you now, whether it's alchemy or martial arts." Sixth prince, don't you have an alchemy cauldron? Ignoring the crowd, Ningyu extended his hand and waved it in front of Ouyang Yuan. That's a shame. I don't have an alchemy cauldron, so I'll have to borrow one from someone else. Yes, I have an alchemy cauldron. Ouyang Yuan returned to his senses and hurriedly took out a palm-sized cauldron and handed it to Ningyu, saying, "This cauldron is only the 110th cauldron on the ranking of young masters, is it all right?" In fact, it wasn't that Ouyang Yuan didn't want to lend his personal pill furnace to Ningyu. It was because his personal pill furnace had a soul imprint engraved on it. Unless the imprint was removed, Ningyu wouldn't be able to use it. Fortunately, he had a pill furnace that was ranked 110 on the human list. Otherwise, he really didn't know what to do. No problem, any pill furnace will do. Taking the cauldron from Ouyang Yuan's hands, Ningyu thanked him before walking to the table and picking up the remaining 2 sets of medicinal ingredients. Old Tan had mentioned that they had 5 minutes to prepare before refining the pill. These 5 minutes were dispensable to Ningyu. He didn't care and wasn't prepared. "You're not even preparing? Isn't he a little too arrogant? Hihi, I wonder what expression Ningyu will have when he fails." Of course, it's definitely the color of pig liver. Cough cough. At this moment, Old Tan coughed and said, 5 minutes have passed. Next, you guys can start refining the true martial pill. Swoosh. As soon as Old Tan's voice fell, Zhong Tianwen immediately threw the white fiend pill furnace into the air and a red flame appeared on his left hand. Red patterned flame. Zhong Tianwen actually has the red patterned flame. That's a flame ranked 420th on the mystic flame list. With the red patterned flame and the white fiend pill furnace, combined with Zhong Tianwen's 5th grade mid-stage soul force, I guess he can refine the true martial pill in 10 minutes. 10 minutes? In my opinion, 9 minutes at most. The shock that Zhong Tianwen gave everyone was really one after another. First was the white fiend pill furnace ranked 55th on the earth list, then he took out the red patterned flame ranked 420th on the mystic flame list. Putting everything else aside, in terms of equipment, Zhong Tianwen had already completely defeated Ningyu. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Zhong Tianwen controlled the red patterned flame to continuously burn the bottom of the white fiend pill furnace. At the same time, he grabbed a medicinal pill with his right hand and carefully placed it into the pill furnace. Kai Kai. In just 10 seconds, Zhong Tianwen had successfully refined the medicinal pill. Swoosh. On the other side, the eldest prince threw the scorpion pill furnace above his head and a red flame appeared on his left hand. Seeing the red flame in the eldest prince's hand, the surrounding martial artists revealed a shocked expression again. Red scorpion flame. I didn't expect the eldest prince to really have the red scorpion flame. That's a flame ranked 350th on the mystic flame list. The red scorpion flame and the scorpion pill furnace are one. Using the two together will yield twice the result with half the effort. Although the eldest prince's soul force is relatively low, with the red scorpion flame and the scorpion pill furnace, he will only need 8 minutes at most to refine the true martial pill. The shock that the eldest prince gave the surrounding martial artists was even more intense than Zhong Tianwen's. Whether it was the red scorpion flame or the scorpion pill furnace, they were both priceless treasures. At the very least, ordinary 6th-grade alchemists didn't have these things. The eldest prince raised his eyebrows and smiled at Ningyu. He then grabbed a medicinal ingredient and threw it into the pill furnace, starting to refine the true martial pill. Zhong Tianwen and the eldest prince started to refine the true martial pill, but Ningyu acted as if nothing had happened and started to inspect the pill furnace that Oyu Yangyuan had given him. Although Ningyu said that any pill furnace was fine, the prerequisite was that he had to have a good understanding of pill furnaces. After all, there were only 2 sets of medicinal ingredients. If one of the furnaces failed, it would be a huge embarrassment. Ningyu would never allow such a thing to happen. Therefore, he carefully inspected the pill furnace. 3 minutes later, Ningyu withdrew his soul force from the pill furnace and nodded slightly. A pill furnace ranked 110 on the ranking list of young masters. It's suitable for refining the true martial pill. Ningyu threw the pill furnace into the air, then both his hands started to work at the same time, grabbing medicinal ingredients and throwing them into the pill furnace. In just a few moments, Ningyu had thrown all the medicinal ingredients into the pill furnace. What is Ningyu doing? How can he refine a true martial pill like this? Absolutely impossible, throwing medicinal ingredients into the pill furnace. If he can refine a true martial pill, I will twist my head off. Most of the martial artists in the room were geniuses of the capital. Some of them had profound martial arts cultivation, some had powerful soul force, and they were all high-level alchemists. In the eyes of these alchemists, Ningyu's method of refining the true martial pill was completely nonsense. Not to mention the true martial pill, with his method, even a first-grade pill would be difficult to refine. Ha ha ha, Ningyu, have you lost your mind? Zhong Tianwen didn't forget to take a look at Ningyu during the intervals of refining the pills. Especially when he saw Ningyu's method of refining pills, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. If you have lost your mind, go back and get treated, otherwise. What? However, just when Zhong Tianwen was about to mock Ningyu, he saw something extremely shocking. He stood in the same place, raised his wrist and pointed at Ningyu with an extremely horrified look on his face. Up. Chapter 448. 4 minutes pa. Ningyu had sharp eyes and nimble hands, instantly flashing up and grabbing the 2 medicinal pills in his hand. Then, Ningyu opened his palm and the 2 true martial pills appeared in front of everyone. Looking at the round elixir in Ningyu's hand, the spacious number 2 yuan room instantly quietened down. Everyone's mouths were slightly agape and their faces were filled with disbelief. Gulp. After a while, someone swallowed a mouthful of saliva and the originally quiet room became noisy. Ningyu really refined the true martial pill? It is indeed the true martial pill and the quality has reached supreme grade. What? Supreme grade true martial pill? It has only been 4 minutes and Ningyu actually refined the supreme grade true martial pill? Ningyu's alchemy level has actually reached this level. Even if Dan Chunzi was at this age, it would be impossible to refine a true martial Dan so easily. Ningyu's future achievements are destined to be higher than Dan Chunzi's. Let's not talk about this. Look at Zhong Tianwen's face, it looks like a pig's liver. Swish. Everyone's gaze shifted from Ningyu to Zhong Tianwen. At this moment, Zhong Tianwen stood blankly on the spot, his eyes dull and his face full of confusion. If someone had told him in the past that Ningyu could refine the true martial pill in 4 minutes, he would definitely have scoffed at it. However, Ningyu had truly refined the true martial Dan, and there were still 10 seconds left before the 4 minutes mark. In other words, Ningyu refined the true martial pill in less than 4 minutes. Impossible, this is impossible. Suddenly, Zhong Tianwen shouted, there's something wrong with the cauldron. The 2 true martial pills in Ningyu's hands must have been placed in the cauldron long ago. Whoosh! Zhong Tianwen's words caused a huge uproar at the scene. Everyone's gaze shifted to Ningyu again, and soon, to Elder Tan. Old Tan was the referee of this alchemy competition. Everyone's intention was obvious, to let Old Tan inspect the pill furnace. Ningyu, let me check your cauldron, Old Tan said to Ningyu after pondering for a moment. It's not that I don't want you to inspect the furnace, it's just that the first prince is refining the true martial Dan. If I waste time here, who will be responsible if I fail? Ningyu pointed at the first prince and said. The first prince was a very shrewd person. Even though Ningyu had refined the true martial Dan, it did not have any effect on him. From the start of the alchemy until now, 4 minutes had passed. The first prince had already completely refined the medicinal ingredients. According to his speed, he would probably be able to refine the true martial Dan in another 4 to 5 minutes. Ningyu was not stupid. Once the eldest imperial prince successfully refined the true martial pill, wouldn't he be defeated? Ha ha ha, Ningyu, you have a guilty conscience. You don't dare to let Old Tan inspect the furnace. Zhong Tianwen laughed. Ningyu, I know that doing this might be a bit of a waste of time. Don't worry, I will inspect it as fast as I can. I won't waste too much of your time, Old Tan said in a deep voice. It was obvious that he was determined to inspect the furnace. In fact, Old Tan also felt that it was inconceivable. Refining the true martial Dan in 4 minutes was something he had never heard of. The old ancestor of the imperial family had personally refined a true martial Dan some time ago. Even with the old ancestor's peak level of alchemy, it still took him 5 minutes to refine the true martial Dan. The quality of the true martial Dan was the same as the one Ningyu had refined. Therefore, in Old Tan's opinion, Ningyu was definitely cheating. Due to the large number of people here, it was not good for him to say it himself. He felt that he should leave some face for Ningyu. It's not impossible to inspect my furnace, but you have to inspect Zhong Tianwen and the first princes as well. Ningyu said in a deep voice. What a joke. Not wasting time. To hell with it. Ningyu made up his mind in his heart. If he wanted to inspect, he would inspect all 3 pill furnaces together. Otherwise, he would not inspect anyone. Please cooperate a little. Old Tan's expression was somewhat gloomy. Originally, he wanted to leave some face for Ningyu. Who would have thought that Ningyu would not appreciate the face he gave and instead opposed him? Since he did not stop with his good words, then Old Tan planned to use force. In the next moment, Old Tan took a step out and stood in front of Ningyu. Swoosh! Old Tan's action made Ouyang Yuan's expression extremely ugly. His figure flashed and blocked in front of Ningyu. The pill furnace was given to Ningyu by me. Could it be that Old Tan doesn't even believe me? Ouyang Yuan said coldly. Old Tan seemed to be making things difficult for Ningyu, but in reality, he was included in it as well. How could he not be angry? How could he not be angry? 6th Prince, this matter has nothing to do with you. Old Tan's expression was solemn as he said, there's definitely no problem with your pill furnace. I just don't quite believe in Ningyu. If Ningyu isn't guilty, why won't he let me inspect the pill furnace? Words that are rather nice to hear. Ningyu smiled faintly and said, if you want to incriminate someone, you can always find a pretext. Today, I want to see how you inspect my pill furnace. The fury in Ningyu's heart was very great, very great. Old Tan was clearly opposing him. Towards this kind of person, he could not let him reach for a yard after taking an inch. Ningyu could conclude that Old Tan would definitely say that there was a problem with the pill furnace. Ignoring Old Tan, Ningyu threw the pill furnace into the air and casually grabbed the medicinal herbs, throwing all of them into the pill furnace. After such a torment, another minute passed. The eldest prince by the side was already about to form the pill. If he continued to delay, it would only be disadvantageous to him. Ningyu was not a fool and naturally understood this logic. Want to inspect the pill? Sure, Wait until I refine the second batch of true martial pill. Humph. Looks like you really have a problem. Fine, I'll snatch your pill furnace first and then carefully study it. Seeing that Ningyu was ignoring him, Old Tan snorted coldly. Both his feet stepped on the ground and his palm grabbed straight at the pill furnace in the air. Could it be that Ningyu really has a guilty conscience? Inside the box, Ren Xiangtian's brows were tightly knitted as he muttered. To be honest, Ren Xiangtian was also rather suspicious of Ningyu. Because refining a supreme-grade true martial pill in 4 minutes and using someone else's pill furnace, he had a skeptical attitude. However, as a peerless genius of the Alchemy Union, he had heard from the upper echelons of the Alchemy Union that there was a type of heaven-defying genius in this continent. Their control of soul force had reached the acme of perfection. In the Skyfiend region, there were even people who could refine a true martial pill in 3 minutes. Furthermore, the quality was not lower than supreme grade. Although Ren Xiangtian did not believe in Ningyu, he did not kick him when he was down. Instead, he wanted to compete with Ningyu in alchemy. Refining a supreme grade true martial pill in 4 minutes. Even I might not be able to do that. Compared to Ren Xiangtian, the martial artists at the peak of the primal core stage were more shocked. In the second Yuan box, he was probably the only one who knew how difficult it was to refine a true martial pill in 4 minutes and how unbelievable it was. When Ningyu had been refining the pill, he had been watching the whole time. He could basically conclude that Ningyu did not cheat. In fact, refining a true martial pill in 4 minutes was not even Ningyu's limit. Chapter 449. Changing Furnace Bang. Right at this moment, a voice sounded out from midair. Ningyu punched out, clashing head-on with Elder Tan. Whoosh, whoosh. After one move, Ningyu and Old Tan stood on both sides. What? Ningyu's martial arts strength is so strong. Elder Tan is an early-stage yin-yang realm martial artist, but Ningyu actually took one move from him and did not fall into a disadvantageous position. His alchemy skills are superb, and his martial arts strength is formidable. No wonder he is a core disciple of the Sacred Institute of Danwu College. Humph. Old Tan didn't use his full strength, or Ningyu would have been killed long ago. The surrounding discussions clearly infuriated Zhong Tianwen. In his opinion, Ningyu was just a late-stage true martial realm martial artist. Even if his strength was valiant, it was still impossible for him to take a full blow from Elder Tan. Therefore, he concluded that Elder Tan definitely hadn't used his full strength. Elder Tan didn't use his full strength. It is possible. After all, Ningyu is a cultivator invited by the Emperor. If Old Tan uses his full strength, he might accidentally injure Ningyu. No matter what, Ningyu can be proud of himself for being able to take one move from Elder Tan. The discussions of the cultivators in the private rooms reached Old Tan's ears, causing his expression to turn unsightly. Although he hadn't used his full strength, he had still used 80% of it. He was very surprised that Ningyu could block an attack with 80% of his strength. Although Ningyu had resisted his oppressive aura on the street, it was only an oppressive aura. Now, it was a solid punch, and Ningyu had actually blocked it. He had originally thought highly of Ningyu, but he did not expect that Ningyu would give him one shock after another. Ningyu, no matter what, I'm going to check your pill furnace today. Old Tan's face was gloomy as he berated. It's not impossible for you to inspect my pill furnace. Suddenly, Ningyu rolled his eyes and said, but I have a request. What request? Elder Tan asked. Very simple, lend me your pill furnace. Ningyu snapped his fingers and said. Hearing Ningyu's words, Old Tan's first reaction was to reject. Soon, he changed his mind. He reached into his robe and pulled out a pill furnace. Ningyu, this is my pill furnace. I'll lend it to you now. Elder Tan casually threw the pill furnace to Ningyu and said in a deep voice, I'll go get you another set of ingredients for refining the true martial pill. You can use this pill furnace to refine the true martial pill. Saying that, Elder Tan was about to leave the room. However, before Elder Tan could walk out of the room, Ningyu waved his hand and said, there's no need to go through so much trouble. I can transfer the medicinal ingredients to your furnace. In the next moment, Ningyu's soul force entered Ouyang Yuan's pill furnace and controlled the medicinal ingredients inside to fly out and float in the air. Elder Tan, check these medicinal herbs and see if there's any problem. If there's no problem, I'll put them into your cauldron, Ningyu said faintly as he pointed at the medicinal herbs in the air. Ningyu was not a fool. He quietly used his perception to probe Elder Tan and discovered that Elder Tan did not have the true martial pill on him. Without the true martial pill on him, it was almost impossible for Elder Tan to frame him. In other words, Elder Tan only had one way to frame him, and that was to leave the room to get the true martial pill. Now that he did not let Elder Tan leave the room, Elder Tan naturally did not have the true martial pill, and it would be very difficult to frame him. Damn it. Sure enough, Ningyu's actions made Elder Tan's face turn ashen. He could not wait to attack Ningyu again and take down Ningyu on the spot. However, he was not that stupid. Since Ningyu had already said so, if he attacked Ningyu again, it would be somewhat of a disadvantage. Helpless, Elder Tan could only release his perception and carefully examine the medicinal pills in the air. Elder Tan, that's enough. If this continues, the eldest prince and Zhong Tianwen will be able to refine the true martial pill. At this moment, the Peak Yuan Core Realm martial artist said lightly. That's right. There's nothing wrong with these medicinal ingredients. Let's let Ningyu continue refining the true martial pill. Beside him, Ren Xiangtian was also biased towards Ningyu. Ren Xiangtian really wanted to see how long Ningyu could use Elder Tan's pill furnace to refine the true martial pill. This was because Elder Tan's pill furnace was not even on the human roll of pill furnaces. It was just an ordinary pill furnace, which was worth at most 100,000 upper-grade yuan crystals. If Ningyu could quickly refine the true martial pill using this kind of inferior pill furnace, it was enough to show how awesome Ningyu was. Ningyu, there's nothing wrong with the medicinal ingredients. You can continue refining the true martial pill. Elder Tan looked at the eldest prince on the other side and curled his lips. Although there's nothing wrong with the medicinal ingredients, I have to carefully examine your pill furnace. Whatever. Ningyu shrugged and controlled the medicinal ingredients to enter Elder Tan's pill furnace. The pill furnace that Elder Tan gave him was simply the best of the best. Not only was the quality low, but there was even a soul imprint inside. To use the pill furnace to refine the true martial pill, the soul imprint must be erased. The eldest prince can refine the true martial pill in 4.5 minutes at most. Zhong Tianwen still has 5 minutes. I have to speed up. Taking a deep breath, Ningyu's soul force surged out and entered the cauldron. Attacking the soul imprint. What Ningyu needed to do was to erase Elder Tan's soul imprint first. Although Old Tan's soul force wasn't too strong, only at the early stage of rank 4, his soul imprint was extremely powerful. Even though Ningyu's soul force was at the peak of rank 5, it still took him 30 seconds to erase his soul imprint. Fart. As soon as Ningyu erased the soul imprint inside the pill furnace, Elder Tan felt a fishy sweetness in his throat. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Fortunately, he swallowed it back down. Otherwise, he would have lost a lot of face. After erasing the soul imprint inside the pill furnace, Ningyu placed his right hand at the bottom of the pill furnace, and a blue flame appeared. Azure Spirit Fire. At this moment, Ningyu decided to use the Azure Spirit Fire. There was not much time left. If he used Yuan Qi to ignite the flame, it might be too late. Therefore, Ningyu used the flame ranked 280th on the Mystic Flames list, the Azure Spirit Fire. However, when Ningyu used the Azure Spirit Fire, he modified it slightly, making it difficult for the surrounding martial artists to detect its rank. Why does the flame on Ningyu's fingertip look so familiar? Ren Xiangtian frowned when he saw the blue flame on Ningyu's fingertip. He was very sensitive to flames and could basically determine that the flame on Ningyu's fingertip was not simple. It was at least in the top 500 of the Mystic Flames list. The Azure Spirit Fire, ranked 280th on the Mystic Flames list. On the face of the pinnacle of the Primal Core stage martial artist, a grave expression surfaced. His understanding of flames was deeper than Ren Xiangtian's. When Ningyu took out the flame, he knew that it was the Azure Spirit Fire, ranked 280th on the Mystic Flames list. Chapter 450. Compromise Kai Kai. In mid-air, Ningyu was controlling the flame of the blue spirit fire while controlling his soul force into the cauldron to start refining the true martial pill. With Ningyu's soul force at the peak of the 5th grade, he could refine the true martial pill without any trouble, and the lowest quality would be the highest grade. There were still 4 minutes before the eldest prince and Zhong Tianwen could refine the true martial pill. In other words, Ningyu had to refine the true martial pill within 4 minutes to win. Using Old Tan's inferior pill furnace to refine the true martial Dan, for the current Ningyu, there was still a long way to go. I can refine the true martial pill in 5 minutes. Let's see how arrogant you can be then, Zhong Tianwen snorted coldly and said sinisterly. Zhong Tianwen had the white fiend cauldron and the red patterned fire. Combined with the soul force of the 5th grade middle stage, he had already reached the last step in just 5 minutes. The pill formation was also the most important part of refining the true martial pill. Even with Zhong Tianwen's alchemy level, it would still take him 5 minutes to complete the final pill formation. I can refine the true martial pill in 4 minutes. Compared to Zhong Tianwen, the eldest prince's speed of refining the true martial pill was much faster. Although the eldest prince's soul force was not as strong as Zhong Tianwen's, his cauldron and flame were better than Zhong Tianwen's. Comparing the two, it was reasonable that he could refine the true martial pill before Zhong Tianwen. Bang! However, just as Ningyu and the others were refining the true martial pill, a crisp voice sounded. Ningyu, you actually said that there is no problem with the cauldron? Old Tan slammed the cauldron on the ground and scolded, look at what's in the cauldron. Crash! The crisp sound of the cauldron falling on the ground and Old Tan's scolding easily attracted everyone's attention. What's going on? What's wrong with the cauldron? I didn't find any problem. I don't see any problem either. Is Elder Tan deliberately making things difficult for Ningyu? It's hard to say. After all, the first prince is about to refine the true martial Dan. Elder Tan is indeed ruthless to deal with Ningyu at this time. Hehe. Ningyu is not a pushover. Let's wait and see for now. At first, the voices of the surrounding martial artists were very soft, but in the end, the voices gradually became louder. It wasn't that they found their conscience and spoke up for Ningyu, but Elder Tan's actions were indeed a little overboard. Without any evidence, he deliberately made things difficult for Ningyu. This was clearly looking for trouble. Open your eyes wide and see what's in this furnace. The discussions of the surrounding cultivators clearly caused Old Tan's expression to turn ugly. However, he was still rational and did not get angry. Instead, he pointed at the cauldron on the ground and said coldly, what else could be inside the pill furnace? As soon as Old Man Tan's voice fell, an alchemist released his soul force and carefully entered the pill furnace. F***CK. Very quickly, the alchemist cursed. What's in the pill furnace? I'm not sure. Let's check it too. Yes, let's check it. There were also many alchemists in the second Yuan room. Of course, apart from Ningyu and Zhong Tianwen, Ren Xiangtian and the peak primal core martial artist were the highest level of alchemy. The two of them frowned and pondered for a moment before they also released their soul force and began to probe the pill furnace. Swish. However, just as they released their soul force, Old Man Tan's figure flashed and landed in front of them. You two, give me some face. Don't interfere in this matter. I will definitely thank you in the future. Old Man Tan's words were a little vague, but the meaning was clear. Old Man Tan, by doing this, aren't you afraid that the Emperor? Ren Xiangtian frowned and said. If I told you that I'm doing this completely on the orders of that person, I wonder how you would feel. Old Man Tan interrupted Ren Xiangtian and said lightly. Ren Xiangtian instantly understood. It turned out that Old Man Tan wasn't fighting alone in this matter. There was an even more powerful existence behind him. After pondering for a moment, Ren Xiangtian said in a low voice, no matter what, Ningyu is a core disciple of Danwu College's Sacred Institute. Isn't that person a little too petty by doing this? Petty? Haha, to tell you the truth, the Emperor wants to choose one of the 3 princes to be the crown prince. Old Man Tan raised his eyebrows and smiled. Therefore, the crown prince must not leave Tianyuan building at this time. Isn't the emperor afraid of offending Danwu College? Ren Xiangtian still wanted to fight for Ningyu and continued, Ningyu is many times stronger than Zhong Tianwen. If Danwu College finds out about today's matter, they will definitely spend more resources on Ningyu. In fact, it is very likely that Ningyu will be promoted to the second son of saint in Danwu College's history. If Ningyu wants to become the son of saint, he might still be a little short. At this moment, the peak primal core martial artist said slowly, Danwu College has extremely strict requirements for the son of saint. Otherwise, there wouldn't be only one son of saint after so many years. Even if Ningyu can't become the son of saint, you can't frame him, right? Ren Xiangtian said in a low voice. I agree with that. The peak primal core martial artist nodded and turned to Old Man Tan. If there really was a problem with the cauldron, I wouldn't say anything if you punished Ningyu. But now that there is nothing wrong with the cauldron, I'm afraid I won't agree to it if you frame him. This, Old Man Tan could ignore Ren Xiangtian's words, but he had to consider the words of a peak primal core martial artist. Because of the status of a peak primal core martial artist, he could not afford to offend him. Even the current emperor had to think twice before acting. After a moment of silence, Old Man Tan began to use the secret method of the royal family to contact the emperor. After a moment, Old Man Tan took a deep breath, and his expression became somewhat ugly. Old Man Tan, how did the discussion go? The peak primal core martial artist asked lightly. Ningyu is lucky today to have you speak up for him. Old Man Tan's expression was cold, and a huge suction force exploded from his palm. In an instant, the cauldron on the ground was caught in his hand. What is Old Man Tan doing? I'm not sure. Didn't he say that there was a problem with the cauldron? Why did he take it back now? Maybe. I'm not sure either. Why are you talking if you're not sure? Old Man Tan's expression was somewhat gloomy as he said in a clear voice, I was careless just now. There is nothing wrong with this cauldron. Nothing wrong? That's impossible. I found a true martial pill in the cauldron, an early-stage 4th-grade alchemist exclaimed. Heh, let me tell you. The peak primal core martial artist smiled and said, what you found was not a true martial pill, but an elixir that is extremely similar to the true martial pill, the true spirit pill. True spirit pill? The early-stage 4th-grade alchemist frowned slightly and murmured. Chapter 451. Crack. Just as everyone's attention was on the true martial pill, someone yelled, attracting everyone's attention. In the second Yuan room, countless gazes were directed at the first prince. Everyone wanted to know if the first prince would be able to refine the true martial pill first. As for Ningyu, he was ignored. Clang. The eldest prince smacked the cauldron with his right hand, and a crisp sound echoed in the room. The lid of the cauldron flew up, and the true martial pill inside was about to burst out. Boom. At that moment, Ningyu's eyes turned cold, and he smacked the cauldron with his palm. Crack. The next moment, the lid flew off, and the cauldron exploded. 2 round and slightly black medicinal pills shot out. Swoosh. Ningyu had sharp eyes and nimble hands, instantly grabbing the medicinal pill in his hand. This is impossible. Looking at the pills in Ningyu's hand, the eldest prince's mouth was slightly agape, and he stood rooted to the ground. He didn't even take out the true martial pill from the cauldron. Cheating. Ningyu is definitely cheating. On the other side, the shock in Zhong Tianwen's eyes was no less than the eldest prince's. Ningyu used Old Tan's broken cauldron to refine the true martial pill in 4 minutes. He wouldn't believe it no matter what. In Zhong Tianwen's opinion, Ningyu must be cheating. Idiot. Ningyu glanced at Zhong Tianwen from the corner of his eye, and walked straight to Old Tan. It didn't take long for Ningyu to arrive in front of Elder Tan. Can I trouble you to check and see if it is a true martial dan? Ningyu opened his palm and the 2 dans in his palm appeared in Elder Tan's vision. No need to check. They are true martial pills, and they are supreme-grade true martial pills. Old Man Tan released his soul force and examined the 2 pills for a while before speaking with extreme reluctance. Whoosh. Elder Tan's words instantly caused an uproar. He actually refined a real martial dan again. This time, Ningyu used a broken alchemical furnace. To be able to refine a Zhenwu Dan in such a short period of time, it's really not easy. That's right. The most important thing is that Ningyu is refining the best quality true martial Dan. This is the most coquettish, compared to the gasps of the crowd. Ren Xiangtian and the pinnacle of the primal core stage were the most shocked. What they were concerned about was not whether or not Ningyu could refine the true martial Dan, but how long would it take for Ningyu to refine the true martial Dan. The result was very surprising to them. Even though he used Old Tan's broken alchemical furnace, Ningyu still spent less than 5 minutes to refine a true martial Dan, and the quality had even reached the highest grade. Now, both of them were rubbing shoulders with each other, eager to have an alchemy competition with Ningyu. Old Tan, forgive me for asking. The crowd's gasps did not affect Ningyu at all. He looked at Old Tan and said, "Does this count as my victory?" "Indeed, it counts as your victory." Old Tan's face was gloomy. "Since I have won, then please ask Zhong Tianwen and the Crown Prince to leave. They are not welcome here." Ningyu shrugged and said, "What? You want to kick us out?" Hearing Ningyu's words, Zhong Tianwen was the first to explode. He said angrily, "Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? You and the Crown Prince refined the true martial Dan at the same time. How can you be considered the winner? Did the Crown Prince refine the true martial Dan too? Why didn't I know about it?" Ningyu's expression was a little exaggerated as he said, "Ask the Crown Prince to take out the true martial Dan for me to see. If he can take out the true martial Dan, I will consider it your victory." Ha ha ha. Zhong Tianwen laughed out loud. He then changed the topic and said coldly, "Ningyu, you are too confident. The Crown Prince has already refined the true martial Dan. You are just one step ahead of him." Then, Zhong Tianwen came to the Crown Prince's side and said, "Crown Prince, please take out the true martial Dan and show it to the arrogant Ningyu." "What is Ningyu doing? There is also a true martial Dan in the cauldron." Ren Xiangtian frowned. With his powerful soul power, he could naturally see that there was a true martial Dan in the cauldron. Although it was only a low-grade true martial Dan, it was still a true martial Dan. Once the Crown Prince took out the true martial Dan, didn't that mean that Ningyu was going to lose? There seems to be something wrong with the true martial Dan in the cauldron. The peak of the primal core realm warrior murmured as he stared at the cauldron and took a deep breath. The Crown Prince's face was gloomy. He stood where he was and did not take out the true martial Dan in the cauldron right away. The soul power in his body poured out and entered the cauldron. He seemed to be fiddling with something. After a while, the Crown Prince's palm hit the cauldron hard. The lid flew up, and a smooth and round elixir shot out from the cauldron. The Crown Prince grabbed the elixir in his hand and waved it in front of everyone. He said in a low voice, "The quality of the true martial Dan I made is not as good as Ningyu's. It is only a low-grade true martial Dan. A low-grade true martial Dan is still a true martial Dan. Crown Prince, don't belittle yourself." Zhong Tianwen said loudly, "I seem to have heard someone say that as long as the Crown Prince can make the true martial Dan, he will lose." Then, Zhong Tianwen smiled at Ningyu. But that kind of smile was very annoying. I can't believe that Ningyu shot himself in the foot. Yeah, Ningyu had already won, but he just had to ask for it. He asked for it. He can't blame anyone else. The discussion of the martial artists around made Zhong Tianwen even more proud. It was as if he was the one who made the true martial Dan and not the Crown Prince. "Crown Prince, can I ask you a question?" Ningyu said to the Crown Prince expressionlessly. "What is it?" The Crown Prince's eyes flickered. He was about to put the true martial Dan in his pocket. "Hehe, I just want you to take out the true martial Dan and let everyone check it," Ningyu said with a smile. "Ningyu, what do you mean? Do you think the Crown Prince didn't make the true martial Dan?" Zhong Tianwen scolded before the Crown Prince could say anything. "I didn't say that. I just want him to take out the true martial Dan," Ningyu said lightly. "If he has a guilty conscience, he can choose not to take it out." "Humph. Just take it out. What's the big deal?" The first prince snorted coldly and placed the pill in his hand on the table. In the number 2 yuan booth, everyone moved closer to the table, trying to take a closer look at the Dan. The quality of this true martial Dan is just a bit low. There is nothing wrong with it. The Crown Prince is a 4th grade early stage alchemist. It is not easy for him to make a low-grade true martial Dan in 10 minutes. Ning, you wouldn't be unreasonable. What? However, before the last cultivator could finish his sentence, his eyes widened and a look of shock appeared on his face. Crack. Chapter 452. An inexplicable threat. Damn it. When the low-grade true martial pill was broken, the first prince dashed out violently. After cursing in his heart, he dashed straight towards the table. Whoosh. However, as soon as the first prince moved, Ningyu moved and blocked his way. Get out of my way, the eldest prince said coldly. Hehe, why are you in such a hurry? Do you want to keep the shattered true martial pill? Ningyu smiled. Bang. The eldest prince's face darkened when he heard Ningyu's words. In the next moment, he took a step forward and punched Ningyu's chest with his fist that contained a violent fluctuation of yuan qi. In order to repel Ningyu, the first prince used all his strength in this attack, bringing forth gusts of strong wind. Big brother is so strong. The 6th prince, Ouyang Yuan, looked serious when he saw the eldest prince's attack. The eldest prince was the biggest obstacle on his path to becoming the crown prince. With the eldest prince in his way, he had almost no hope of becoming the crown prince. He and the eldest prince had similar power, the only difference being their own strength. If he could beat the eldest prince in martial arts, he would have an 80% chance of becoming the crown prince. As for the remaining 20%, it was the 3rd prince, Ouyang Hai. Let's fight. It's best if both sides suffer. The 3rd prince, Ouyang Hai, watched the fight between Ningyu and the eldest prince like a bystander, as if it had nothing to do with him. What is the eldest prince trying to do? Ningyu can even fight against old Tan. How can he be a match for Ningyu? Ren Xiangtian frowned. He felt that the eldest prince was digging his own grave. There was no chance of him winning. Old Tan was an early-stage yin-yang realm martial artist. If Ningyu could take a blow from him without losing, it showed how strong Ningyu was. The eldest prince was only an early-stage primordial core martial artist. Even if he gave it his all, he might not be a match for Ningyu. Shio. At that moment, a silhouette dashed past the first prince, and with a shocking speed, flew towards the table where the low-grade true martial pills were placed. It's Zhong Tianwen. What is he doing? Isn't it obvious? He wants to snatch the low-grade true martial Dan. Originally, everyone's attention had been focused on Ningyu and the first prince. They wanted to see if Ningyu could block the first prince's fatal attack. However, Zhong Tianwen's sudden action caused them to start discussing. The discussions of these cultivators naturally distracted Ningyu, causing him to look at Zhong Tianwen. Hehe, it's not good to be distracted now. Ningyu had just turned his head when the great prince's laughter rang out beside his ear. At the next moment, the first prince's fist arrived before Ningyu and smashed fiercely toward Ningyu's chest. Noisy. Faced with such a powerful attack from the first prince, Ningyu let out a low bellow. He infused the essence in his sea of consciousness into his wrist and threw a backhand punch. It collided with the first prince's fist. Bang! Crack! First, a crisp sound was heard, followed by a cracking sound. Ah! In the end, the first prince let out a hysterical scream, and his body retreated explosively. Shoosh! As the first prince retreated, Ningyu rose from the ground and appeared before Zhong Tianwen in the blink of an eye. Furthermore, Ningyu quickly reached out his right hand and grabbed at Zhong Tianwen's wrist. Get out of my way! Zhong Tianwen was about to grab the low-grade true martial Dan, but the sudden appearance of his palm made his eyes turn cold. The next moment, Zhong Tianwen's palm turned into a claw and grabbed at Ningyu's wrist. Crack! Unfortunately, Ningyu also turned his fist into a claw and grabbed Zhong Tianwen's wrist before he could. Ah! A crisp sound accompanied by the squeal of a pig being slaughtered rang out in booth number 2. Don't be so shameless. This Dan is indeed a low-grade true martial Dan, but it is only a semi-finished product. It cannot be considered a real true martial Dan. After pushing back Zhong Tianwen, Ningyu pointed at the Dan on the table and said coldly, "What? A semi-finished product? A martial artist exclaimed. It really is a semi-finished product. No wonder Ning Yu was so confident. An early level 4 alchemist nodded. Yes, after all this time, the first prince made a semi-finished product. I thought he. Another mid-primal core martial artist said with a frown. Don't talk so much. Before the mid-primal core martial artist could finish, another martial artist next to him gave him a look and whispered, the first prince is already miserable enough. Zhong Tianwen, first prince, do you want to leave the booth yourselves, or do I have to invite you out? Ning Yu did not ask Old Tan this time. Instead, he said lightly, I won't make things difficult for you if you leave yourselves, but if I invite you out, I might ask for some compensation. Ning Yu, aren't you going a bit too far? Old Tan felt the need to plead on behalf of the first prince and Zhong Tianwen. The first prince and Zhong Tianwen have already been injured by you. Asking them to leave now is not very kind. Haha, I just gave them a chance by asking them to leave. Ning Yu smiled. If the injuries on their palms are not treated in time within an hour, there will likely be repercussions. I only asked them to leave to treat the injuries on their palms. When it's possible to let people off, one should take a detour. Sometimes, giving others a chance is also giving yourself a chance. Old Tan said solemnly. I understand this logic, but I'm the one who decides who I give a chance to. You don't. Ning Yu said indifferently, not giving any face to Old Tan. Old Tan's face darkened. He wished he could attack Ning Yu again. However, he was very clear that he could not attack Ning Yu again without the Emperor's orders. Buzz buzz. Suddenly, the space around Old Tan trembled slightly. Then, an almost undetectable sound entered his ears. The corners of Old Tan's mouth rose slightly, revealing a sinister smile. Old Tan crossed his arms and stared at Ning Yu with interest. Ning Yu, I have a piece of news to tell you. I wonder if you want to hear it. Ning Yu raised his eyebrows and said indifferently, what news? Why don't you tell me? There are a total of 3 boxes on the 4th floor of the Tianyuan restaurant. Aside from our box, there is also Yuan Box 1 and Yuan Box 3. Senior Tan paced 2 steps in the room and said, your friends may have encountered some trouble in the 3rd Yuan box. Trouble? Ning Yu faintly felt that something was wrong. However, he did not lose his rationality. Chapter 453. Chapter 453, Death throw him out ha ha ha, ouch. Zhong Tianwen could not help but laugh at Old Man Tan's words. However, because his laughter was too loud, it triggered the injury on his wrist, causing him to grimace in pain. Ning Yu, if I remember correctly, Lu Wei and the rest should be in the 3rd Yuan room. Zhong Tianwen endured the pain from his wrist and said fiercely, 3 early primal core Zhong family martial artists, TSK, just thinking about it makes me excited. Zhong Tianwen, don't get excited here, just get out. Fengzi was in the 3rd Yuan room, and with him around, not to mention 3 early primal core Zhong family martial artists, even if there were 5 or 10, Ning Yu would not be too worried. With Fengzi's powerful strength, defeating 3 early primal core Zhong family martial artists was as easy as pie. Therefore, as soon as Ning Yu's voice fell, he went straight to Zhong Tianwen, grabbed his shoulder, and lifted him up like he was lifting a chick. Put me down, or I'll teach you a lesson. Being lifted up by Ning Yu, Zhong Tianwen felt humiliated and shouted. However, Ning Yu completely ignored him and walked straight to the door of the 2nd Yuan room. Bang! In the next moment, Ning Yu exerted some strength in his wrist and threw Zhong Tianwen out of the room. Clap clap. Then, Ning Yu dusted his hands and once again came before the first prince. Facing the first prince, Ning Yu did not treat him the same way he treated Zhong Tianwen, but said calmly, I will not make things difficult for you, you better leave the room yourself. Once I make a move, you might be a little embarrassed. Ning Yu, is there really no room for negotiation? The first prince's face was cold as he said in a low voice. To be honest, he could not accept leaving the room. As the first prince of the Dacia kingdom, the most likely contender for the position of crown prince, if word got out that he had compromised with Ning Yu in the 2nd Yuan room, how could he establish himself in the Dacia kingdom? How could he establish himself in the capital? It's too late to discuss it with me now, Ningyu said lightly. You. The first prince's face was livid and extremely gloomy. He had no choice but to shift his gaze to Elder Tan, hoping to get his help. At this time, only Old Tan could help him and let him stay in the private room. Sigh, Elder Tan sighed softly and turned his head away, refusing to look at the first prince. Without the emperor's approval, Elder Tan did not dare to do anything to Ningyu. Ka. Elder Tan's actions caused the eldest prince to clench his fists so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard, and his heart sank to rock bottom. Ningyu, let's put this matter behind us. I owe you a favor. Right at this moment, a powerful voice resounded from room 2. Voila! The moment this voice rang out, the expressions of all the cultivators in the private rooms turned serious. I thought you wouldn't open your mouth. Ningyu was not too surprised. After all, the eldest prince was a strong contender for the position of crown prince, and the emperor would definitely not allow him to leave Qianyuan restaurant. The emperor had personally spoken up to plead for the eldest prince. If Ningyu continued to be stubborn, it would not be forceful, but foolish. Elder Tan, bring Ming for treatment. I will personally host the rest of the assessment. The powerful voice rang out again, leaving no room for doubt. Yes. Elder Tan didn't dare to be negligent. After responding, he immediately left the second Yuan room with the eldest prince. Since Ningyu has defeated Ming and Zhong Tianwen in alchemy, then Ningyu does not need to participate in the following alchemy assessment. He can directly participate in the final assessment. After Elder Tan left, the powerful voice rang out again. Your Majesty, I have a request. As soon as the powerful voice rang out, a peak primal core cultivator stepped forward and said in a deep voice, I want to compete with Ningyu in alchemy. You want to compete with him in alchemy? In room 1, the middle-aged man's expression was somewhat displeased, but he still said in a deep voice, I cannot make the decision on this matter. As long as you can ask for Ningyu's permission, I don't mind. Raising an eyebrow, the peak primal core cultivator came before Ningyu and said directly, I want to compete with you in alchemy. I hope you can agree. Why should I compete with you in alchemy? Ningyu did not immediately agree to the peak primal core cultivator's request, but frowned instead. Up until now, Ningyu did not even know who the peak primal core cultivator was. Compete with him in alchemy? There was no need at all. Haha, my identity is very ordinary. The martial artist at the peak of the primal core stage smiled and whispered to Ningyu, as long as you can defeat me in the alchemy competition, I can tell you who I am. Not interested, Ningyu shrugged. You may not be interested now, but if I tell you that I know who the mysterious power in Shueyu Pavilion is, I wonder if you would be interested, the peak primal core cultivator said again. This time, Ningyu was finally moved, and he said in a deep voice, do you know who that mysterious force is? That's right, but only if you can defeat me in alchemy. The peak primal core cultivator nodded and said, no problem, I can promise you that. Hearing this, Ningyu did not hesitate and immediately agreed to the peak primal core cultivator's request. He had originally intended to make a trip to Shueyu Pavilion after leaving Qianyuan Tower. If he could find out who the mysterious power in Shueyu Pavilion was, it would naturally save him a lot of trouble. Indeed straightforward, I like it. The peak primal core cultivator's face lit up as he said this. Ningyu looked at the peak primal core cultivator with disdain. You like me, but I don't like you. Oh, right, I still don't know your name. Suddenly, Ningyu seemed to have thought of something and asked. Look at my memory, Li Tongtian. The peak primal core cultivator patted his head. However, before he could finish his sentence, a cracking sound rang out from the door of the second Yuan booth. Whoosh! As the sound rang out, all the warriors in the booth turned their gazes to the door in unison. If they had not looked, they would not have known, but once they did, they were shocked. In front of the booth, 3 warriors covered in blood stood there, their auras slightly weak. What? The moment he saw these 3 warriors, Ningyu shouted out loud. Because, among the 3 warriors, there was one that he was extremely familiar with. It was none other than Fengzi. Who had beaten Fengzi up like this? Wasn't the highest level warrior in the 3rd Yuan booth only at the early primal core stage? Who had such great power to beat Fengzi up like this? And where were Lu Wei, Xikong Ling, and Xiao Yu? Why didn't he see them? A series of questions arose in Ning Yu's mind, causing his expression to darken completely. Fengzi, what is going on? After a brief moment of shock, Ning Yu took a step forward and came before Fengzi. In a low voice, he asked, "Where are Lu Wei and the rest?" Chapter 454. Illusion. What illusion? Ning Yu's brows knitted tightly as he asked once more. Sucking in a deep breath, Fengzi slowly said, "Yuan room number 3, the entire thing is an illusion." It turned out that after Fengzi and Lu Wei they all entered Yuan room number 3, they suddenly felt their vision go black and instantly lost consciousness. When they woke up, they found themselves in a dense forest. Virtually at the same time, Fengzi knew that he entered an illusion. Furthermore, it was even a high-level illusion. Everything in the surroundings was vivid and lifelike. Just as Fengzi they all were thinking about how to leave the illusion, several peak tier 5 demonic beasts suddenly appeared. Without a word, they directly launched an attack at them. Among the 4 of them, only Fengzi's strength was formidable and could contend with peak tier 5 demonic beasts. As for Xikong Ling and Xiao Yu they were completely insufficient. The 3 of them joining hands were not a match for a peak tier 5 demonic beast. As they fought, Fengzi and Lu Wei they all got separated. What happened next? Fengzi had no idea. He only remembered that he killed several peak tier 5 demonic beasts, then was transported out. Are Lu Wei they all still in Yuan room number 3? Hearing Fengzi's narration, Ning Yu said in a solemn voice. That's right. When I came out, I saw that Lu Wei and Xiao Yu they all were still in Yuan room number 3. It's just that their expressions were lifeless and had not left the illusion yet, Fengzi replied. Looks like it's not a simple illusion, but a high-level illusion. Ning Yu's expression became extremely solemn. Logically speaking, low-level environments, as long as the character encountered danger or suffered interference, they would automatically leave the illusion. High-level illusionary realms were different. The injuries suffered in the illusionary realms would be brought back to reality. This was the most terrifying. Swoosh. Right at this time, a figure appeared in front of Yuan room number 2. Elder Tan. Seeing this familiar figure, Ning Yu's brows furrowed slightly, feeling somewhat incredulous. At this time, shouldn't Elder Tan bring the eldest prince to treat his wrist? Why did he appear here? These 3 warriors are experts selected from the 3rd Yuan box. Next, they will join you and participate in the assessment with you. Old Tan pointed to the 3 cultivators covered in blood and said in a clear voice, because they are injured, they will not participate in the first round of the test. They will participate in the second round directly. Following that, Old Tan said to Fengzi and the rest, follow me. I'll treat you guys first before coming over to participate in the assessment later. No need. Ning Yu waved his hand and said, I'll treat Fengzi's injury, Elder Tan doesn't need to worry. This, Old Tan was dumbfounded and stood rooted to the ground. The reason why Elder Tan gave up on treating the eldest prince and came here was entirely because of the current emperor. The emperor's words were very simple, there was only one sentence. Bring Fengzi to see me. How could Old Man Tan disobey the emperor? Therefore, he gave up on treating the first prince and immediately went to the door of Yuan room number 2. Unexpectedly, Ning Yu interfered. I know my injuries very well. I'll be fine with Ning Yu's help, Fengzi said in a low voice. The injuries you suffered in the illusion are a little special. Although Ning Yu is not weak, I'm afraid it'll be very difficult for him to treat you. Old Tan did not want to give up and decided to give it a try. He said, the illusion was set up by a high-level illusionist in the royal family. He can treat your injuries in an extremely short time. Can I say something? At this moment, Li Tongtian could not stand it anymore. He pointed to Fengzi and said, this brother's injuries are indeed very light. They are all superficial wounds and do not need any additional treatment. If Old Tan thinks that Ning Yu can't treat him, I can give it a try. Although I'm not very strong, I can still help, Ren Xiangtian said. I have a good relationship with Ning Yu. His business is my business. Sixth Prince Ouyang Yuan laughed. Ouyang Yuan would not let go of any opportunity to get closer to Ningyu. Old Tan's expression was extremely ugly. If it was only Ningyu, he could forcefully take Fengzi away. However, with Ouyang Yuan, Ren Xiangtian, and Li Tongtian, he had to think twice. Even he might not be a match for Ren Xiangtian and Li Tongtian, these two big shot. Old Tan, go and do your thing. Leave Fengzi's matter here for now. You don't need to worry about it. Just as Old Tan was feeling very troubled, a soft voice rang in his ear. Hearing this voice, Old Tan felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He glared fiercely at Ningyu and left. Other than Fengzi, two other martial artists covered in blood followed closely behind Old Tan. After Old Tan and the others left, Li Tongtian smiled at Ningyu and said, "Can we start our alchemy competition now?" Wait a moment. Ningyu did not agree to Li Tongtian immediately. Instead, he asked Ouyang Yuan, "How much do you know about the illusion in room 3? To be honest, even I didn't know that there was an illusion in room 3, Ouyang Yuan replied. Clearly, this was also the first time he heard that room 3 was an illusion. Even you don't know, Ningyu fell into deep thought. Since 6th Prince Ouyang Yuan did not know about the illusion, it seemed that only Old Tan and the Emperor knew about it in the vast Chenyuan building. What was the Emperor trying to do? Why did he set up an illusion in room 3? What was his intention? Ningyu did not know about these things. However, there was one thing that Ningyu was certain about. The Emperor most likely did not have good intentions. At the thought of this, Ningyu tried his best to calm himself down. No matter what, at least Lu Wei and the rest were not in danger for the time being. 6th Prince, thank you for your cauldron just now. Without your cauldron, I would not have been able to refine the first batch of true martial pills, Ningyu said to Ouyang Yuan. It was nothing. Furthermore, I did not help you much, Ouyang Yuan said. Ningyu, I might know a thing or two about the illusions in the 3rd Yuan room. Li Tongtian frowned and said, there is only one high-level illusionist in the royal family. The illusion set up by that illusionist affects the weaker one's cultivation. How strong is his soul power? Ningyu asked. Illusionists mainly relied on their soul power to create illusions. Therefore, the stronger the soul power, the more realistic and terrifying the illusion set up. In his previous life, Ningyu had met an illusionist with a 9th grade soul power. Even Ningyu had to spend an entire day to escape from the illusion set up by that illusionist. One could imagine how terrifying the illusion set up by an illusionist with a strong soul power was. Chapter 455. Chapter 455, Death, a formidable enemy, 6th grade soul power. As soon as Li Tongtian finished his sentence, Ningyu's heart skipped a beat and he revealed a shocked expression. With Lu Wei's cultivation, it was almost impossible for her to escape from an illusion set up by a 6th grade illusionist. Ningyu's expression was extremely solemn. He took a step forward and said in a low voice, Li Tongtian, I might not be able to compete with you in alchemy anymore. I have something important to do now. Ningyu would never allow Lu Wei and the rest to suffer in the illusion. Therefore, Ningyu made up his mind to immediately head to Yuan Room 3 and enter the illusion to rescue Lu Wei and the rest. Ningyu, I'm afraid it's too late for you to go now. Perhaps he had seen through Ningyu's thoughts. Li Tongtian said in a low voice, even if you enter the illusion set up by a high-level illusionist, it will be difficult to find anyone else. There are only 2 ways for a normal martial artist to leave the illusion. Ren Xiangtian added, first, leave the illusion like Fengzi did. Second, the illusionist will release them personally. Ningyu, they're right, Fengzi said in a low voice. When we first entered the illusion, there was no one else except for the few of us. This means that even if you enter the illusion, you won't be able to find Lu Wei and the rest. If that's the case, then find the illusionist. Let him release Lu Wei and the rest personally. The Emperor must have known about letting Lu Wei enter the illusion set up by a high-level illusionist, but he did not stop it. Coupled with the fact that the mysterious faction in Snow Pavilion was very likely to have dealings with the royal family, Ningyu could basically conclude that the illusionist had obtained the emperor's approval. As for what the emperor was up to, Ningyu had no idea. I hope Lu Wei and the others are fine. Otherwise. Ningyu clenched his fists and a ruthless look appeared on his face. Ningyu, as long as you can defeat Li Tongtian and the others, I can let you meet the high-level illusionist who set up the illusion. At this moment, an extremely soft voice rang in Ningyu's ears. Hearing this voice, Ningyu's expression changed. He was extremely shocked in his heart. Because the owner of the voice was none other than the current emperor, Li Tongtian. Let's compete on which pill to refine. Since the emperor had spoken, it meant that Lu Wei and the rest were temporarily safe. Since Lu Wei and the rest were not in danger, Ningyu could only follow the emperor's wishes and compete with Li Tongtian and the rest in pill refining. Although the feeling of being led by the nose made Ningyu very unhappy, he was helpless now. Let's compete on refining the true martial pill. After a moment of silence, Li Tongtian said, the true martial pill is only a 4th grade pill. With our alchemy skills, we'll be able to refine it in no time. This time, we'll not only compete on pill refining speed, but also on the quality of the pill. Medicinal pill quality? Ningyu raised his brows and said without batting an eyelid. That's right. Whoever refines the true martial pill first wins, Li Tongtian said solemnly. Swoosh. Li Tongtian's words silenced the second Yuan room. The rest of the alchemists had their mouths agape. Their faces were filled with astonishment. The true martial pill? Could Ningyu and Li Tongtian refine it? Although the true martial dan was only a 4th grade dan, the transcendent true martial dan was extremely difficult to refine. It could be said that even a 5th grade or 6th grade alchemist would not dare to say that they could refine a transcendent true martial dan. Who on earth was Li Tongtian to want to refine a true martial pill? Count me in. I'd like to try refining a true martial pill too. However, what surprised the crowd was yet to come. Ren Xiangtian immediately expressed his desire to join the ranks of those who wanted to refine the true martial pill. Were they too outdated, or was the world too crazy? Swoosh. After that, the crowd turned their attention to Ningyu. They wanted to see if Ningyu would agree to it. I'm fine with it. Let's refine the true martial pill. Ningyu's answer did not disappoint the crowd. Great. Straightforward indeed. Seeing that Ningyu had agreed, Li Tongtian let out a loud cry of joy. As an alchemist, Li Tongtian had never been a match for his peers. Ever since he saw Ningyu, he had made up his mind to compete with Ningyu in alchemy. When he was at the 4th grade soul power level, Li Tongtian had tried refining the true martial pill once. Regrettably, he failed to control the fire properly, resulting in the failure of refining the true martial pill. Since then, he had never tried to refine a true martial pill again. Oh right, what cauldron are you using? Li Tongtian regained his composure and asked. A good cauldron could greatly improve an alchemist's skills, especially when refining a true martial pill. Without a good cauldron, it would be difficult to succeed. I'll use the 6th prince's cauldron. I used it just now and it fits. Ningyu said calmly, as if the cauldron did not affect him at all. Humph. What are you trying to act tough for? Do you really think it's that easy to refine a true martial pill? Suddenly, the 3rd prince Ouyang Hai sneered and mocked, take out your cauldron. Even if you fail, we won't laugh at you. Ouyang Hai's words only made Ningyu frown. He did not take it to heart. If he had to listen to every Tom, Dick and Harry, wouldn't it be a waste of time? Ningyu's indifferent attitude made Ouyang Hai's face turn ugly. Ouyang Hai was not an idiot. His alchemy skills were worlds apart from Ningyu's and their martial skills were also not on the same level. Even if he looked down on Ningyu, he only dared to talk about it. He did not dare to go against Ningyu directly. Ningyu, why don't we make a bet? Suddenly, Ouyang Hai's ears twitched and he said coldly, as long as you can refine a true martial pill, I can. Shut up. I'm not interested in making a bet with you. Ningyu interrupted Ouyang Hai and said, if you know what's good for you, move aside. Otherwise, I'll make you pay. As he spoke, Ningyu looked at Fengzi. His meaning was self-evident. Swoosh. Fengzi understood and in a flash, He appeared in front of Ouyang Hai. Fengzi extended his right hand and grabbed Ouyang Hai's shoulder like he was carrying a little chick and walked out of the room. You're courting death. Ouyang Hai was furious to be grabbed by Fengzi. After cursing, he clenched his fists and was about to throw them at Fengzi. What? However, just as Ouyang Hai was about to throw out his palm, his expression changed. His face was full of disbelief. He felt his whole body go limp and he could not exert any strength in his hand. Scram! While Ouyang Hai was still in shock, Fengzi threw him out of the room. Ouyang Hai's body condition made Ningyu frown. He could not help but look at Li Tongtian. Just as Ouyang Hai was about to throw a punch, Ningyu noticed a cold gleam shoot out from Li Tongtian and enter Ouyang Hai's body. Chapter 456. Begin. If I'm not wrong, that ray of cold light just now was Li Tongtian's soul power. Ningyu narrowed his eyes as a thought formed in his mind. A formidable opponent. Li Tongtian was definitely a formidable opponent. Although Ningyu could also use his soul power to make Ouyang Hai's body go limp, it would not be as simple as Li Tongtian. This meant that the strength of Li Tongtian's soul power might be even stronger than Ningyu's. Ningyu's soul power was at the pinnacle of the 5th grade. If it was stronger than his own, then, it was highly possible that it was at the 6th grade. Hehe, Ningyu, I have never seen your alchemy furnace. Why don't you show it to me? At this moment, Li Tongtian smiled faintly and said, your alchemy cauldron should not be of a low level. If I told you that I don't have an alchemy furnace with me, would you believe me? Ningyu asked seriously. Staring into Ningyu's eyes, Li Tongtian shook his head and said, I don't believe you. A 5th grade alchemist doesn't have an alchemy furnace with him. Not only me, but everyone here will not believe it. How can he not have an alchemy furnace? He must not want to show it. Not want to show it? This is a supreme grade true martial pill. How can he succeed if he doesn't have an alchemy furnace with him? It is precisely because the supreme grade true martial pill is extremely difficult to refine that Ningyu chose not to use an alchemy furnace with him. This way, even if he fails, he will have an excuse. That's possible. The discussions in the surroundings caused Ningyu's brows to knit together tightly, and he revealed a displeased expression. However, no matter what others said, Ningyu remained unmoved. The next moment, Ningyu came to Ouyang Yuan's side and said, please lend me your alchemy furnace again. I will return it to you very soon. Here, use it however you like. You don't have to return it to me. Ouyang Yuan handed the alchemy furnace to Ningyu, indicating that he could give it to Ningyu. Ningyu shrugged and declined to comment on Ouyang Yuan's generosity. After that, Ningyu waved the cauldron in his hand and said to Li Tongtian, I have the cauldron now. Can I refine the supreme true martial pill now? There's no hurry. Li Tongtian waved his hand and said, since you are using such an ordinary cauldron, I will not take advantage of you. How about this? After a moment of silence, Li Tongtian continued, I don't need to carry a cauldron with me anymore. I'll just use a normal cauldron like yours. Li Tongtian reached into his robes and took out a palm-sized alchemy furnace. My elixir cauldron is very ordinary. It's ranked number 105 on the ranking list of cauldrons. It's slightly better than the one in your hand. Li Tongtian waved the elixir cauldron in his hand and smiled lightly. Since you're in such a good mood, I can't fall behind. Ren Xiangtian stepped forward with a small cauldron in his hand. Let's all use the cauldrons on the ranking list of cauldrons to refine the true martial pill. Let's see who can refine the supreme true martial pill first. I'll be the judge. I promise I won't be biased. Ouyang Yuan raised his hand. Count me in. Zhu Jianming, who had been silent for a long time, chimed in, even though my alchemy skills aren't that high, I know what a supreme true martial pill is. Ningyu, when do you want to start? Li Tongtian asked. I don't care. As long as I have the ingredients, we can start anytime. Ningyu shrugged. Great. You're straightforward. Li Tongtian hollered and flicked his sleeves. Instantly, a storage pouch appeared in his hands. Swoosh. Swoosh. Li Tongtian patted the storage bag and 2 beams of light shot out. One flew towards Ningyu and the other towards Ren Xiangtian. Smack! Smack! Ningyu and Ren Xiangtian grabbed the beams of light at the same time. The ingredients for refining the true martial pill. The beams of light were none other than the ingredients for refining the true martial pill. Each beam of light contained 2 sets of ingredients. This meant that Ningyu and the rest had 2 chances each. Of course, it didn't matter how many chances they had. After all, they were competing to see who could refine the supreme true martial pill first. Please check the pills. If there's no problem, we can start. Li Tongtian took out 2 sets of ingredients and kept the storage bag. No problem. Ren Xiangtian glanced at the ingredients and said, "Let's start." Ningyu didn't check the ingredients on purpose. When the ingredients were flying towards him, he had already used his soul power to check them. With Li Tongtian's pride, he wouldn't make a fuss about the ingredients. If that's the case, I'll make a move first. As he spoke, Li Tongtian tossed the cauldron in his hand into the air. A green flame appeared on his left fingertip and he started to heat the cauldron. At the same time, Li Tongtian grabbed a stalk of ingredient with his right hand and threw it into the cauldron. He increased the temperature of the flame and started refining the ingredient. What kind of flame is this? Could it be a flame on the mystical flame chart? I don't know. It should be a flame on the mystical flame chart. It could even be in the top 500. Top 500? That's not possible. It's extremely difficult to get the top 500 flames on the mystical flame chart. It should be difficult for Li Tongtian to get it. No matter what, this flame isn't simple. Swoosh. As the crowd was discussing Li Tongtian's flame, Ren Xiangtian threw the small cauldron above his head. He grabbed a stalk of ingredient and threw it into the cauldron. At the same time, a green flame appeared on his fingertip and it kept burning the bottom of the cauldron. Green flame? Could it be the green crane flame that's ranked 307th on the mystical flame chart? I don't think so. I've seen the green crane flame before. It's different from the one in Ren Xiangtian's hand. Even if it's not the green crane flame, it must be an extremely precious flame. Whoosh. Compared to the crowd's shock, Ningyu's face was full of surprise. Others might not know what the green and green flames were, but Ningyu knew them very well. The green flame on Li Tongtian's fingertip was the green spirit flame. It was ranked 260th on the mystical flame chart. The green flame on Ren Xiangtian's wrist was the green serpent flame. It was ranked 265th on the mystical flame chart. Both the green spirit flame and the green serpent flame were ranked higher than the blue spirit flame on the mystical flame chart. Disregarding the strength of one's soul power, Ningyu had already lost to Li Tongtian and Ren Xiangtian in terms of flames alone. Rise. The next moment, Ningyu let out a low growl and threw the cauldron into the air. His soul power surged out and entered the cauldron. At the same time, Ningyu grabbed 2 ingredients and threw them into the cauldron. Although there was only a difference of 1 word between the supreme and supreme true martial elixirs, Ningyu did not dare to be careless. If there was even the slightest mistake, the refining of the supreme true martial elixir would end in failure. Therefore, Ningyu did not throw all the ingredients into the cauldron. Instead, he threw them in 2 at a time. Ningyu wants to use this method to refine the supreme true martial elixir. Chapter 457. The first cauldron failure. That's not possible. It's not that easy to refine a supreme true martial pill. Ningyu won't succeed if he tries to use this method again. Zhu Jianming shook his head and said, I dare say that Ningyu will definitely refine the herbs one by one. He won't. What? However, before Zhu Jianming could finish his sentence, his eyes widened and his face was filled with disbelief. Ningyu grabbed another 2 pearls of herbs and threw them into the cauldron. Gulp. Ningyu's actions made Zhu Jianming swallow a mouthful of saliva. His mouth was wide open enough to fit a fist. If he guessed correctly, the 2 pearls of herbs in the cauldron had not been fully refined. Wasn't Ningyu afraid of the pills exploding when he threw in another 2 pearls of herbs? What the hell is Ningyu doing? He's refining supreme true martial pills and he dares to use this method. Is he an idiot or is he really that capable? It's hard to say. Ningyu's alchemy skills have been proven. Maybe his still. I'm afraid only a fool like Ningyu would dare to use this method to refine supreme true martial pills. Before the last martial artist could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by a cold snort. Rustle. The next moment, a few figures appeared in front of Yuan Room 2. Eldest Prince. Third Prince. Old Tan. These figures belonged to the eldest prince and the rest. However, the eldest prince and the third prince seemed to have lost their differences and had started to work together. After entering the private room, the third prince glared fiercely at Li Tongtian, then snorted coldly, "If Ningyu can use this method to refine supreme Zhenwu pills, I will twist my head off." Whoosh. The third prince's crazy words caused a commotion in the surroundings. Chop his head off. If Ningyu really managed to refine supreme true martial pills, wouldn't he die here? Suddenly, the third prince Ouyang Hai rolled his eyes and walked toward Ouyang Yuan. It didn't take long for him to arrive in front of Ouyang Yuan. He raised his brows and said, "Sixth brother, how about we make a bet?" "Tell me about it," Ouyang Yuan said in a deep voice. "Don't be nervous. This bet is very simple." Ouyang Hai laughed and said, "If Ningyu is unable to refine a transcendent grade true martial dan, you have to give up the fight for the position of crown prince." Upon hearing that, Ouyang Yuan's heart sank, and he could not help but look at the first prince. Ouyang Yangming crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked curiously at Ningyu. He was not as fierce as before. On the other hand, Old Tan looked like he had nothing to do with this matter. Just now, third brother felt weak all over. It doesn't make sense for him to recover so quickly. Elder Tan or Imperial Father must have found someone to treat him. Ouyang Yuan's face was gloomy. He didn't know what Ouyang Hai was up to. To be more accurate, he didn't know what medicine the Emperor had up his sleeve. Fighting for the position of Crown Prince was such an important matter, yet Ouyang Hai said it so casually. Had he already given up the fight for the position of Crown Prince? Sixth brother, if Ningyu is able to refine a transcendent grade true martial dan, I will also give up the fight for the position of Crown Prince. Ouyang Hai continued, "How about it? Do you dare to make this bet with me?" POW. Just as Ouyang Yuan was about to answer, a muffled sound was heard, and the entire Yuan Room 2 was in an uproar. Including Ouyang Yuan, all the martial artists present looked in the direction of the sound. This muffled sound came from Ningyu's cauldron? That's right. It did come from Ningyu's cauldron. In other words, Ningyu's first cauldron of true martial dan ended in failure. I already said that Ningyu can't refine a true martial dan with this kind of alchemy method. After a brief silence, the crowd erupted into a flurry of discussion. The focus of everyone's discussion was on Ningyu, because the muffled sound came from the cauldron on top of Ningyu's head. Ha ha ha, I'm dying of laughter. The third prince, Ouyang Hai, was stunned for a moment before he burst into unbridled laughter. Don't use this kind of alchemy method if you don't have the ability. Oh right, even if he uses other alchemy methods, he can't refine a true martial dan. Just give up. Swoosh. As soon as Ouyang Hai finished speaking, Fengzi's figure burst out and appeared in front of him. Yuan Qi gathered on his wrist. Fengzi raised his fist and said angrily, "Say one more word and I'll throw you out." You. Ouyang Hai's smile stopped abruptly, and he couldn't help but take 2 steps back. But thinking that Old Tan was here, he became a little braver and said in a low voice, "Ningyu failed and you don't let others talk about it. Look at Li Tongtian and Ren Xiangtian, they've already refined all the medicinal ingredients. I believe it won't be long before they can refine a supreme grade true martial dan." Ouyang Hai's words made everyone look at Li Tongtian and Ren Xiangtian. Just as Ouyang Hai said, Li Tongtian had already refined all the medicinal ingredients. At this moment, he was increasing the flame and burning the cauldron fiercely, trying to force out the dregs from the medicinal liquid for the second time. Li Tongtian didn't dare to be careless. After all, it was his first time refining a supreme grade true martial dan. This time, he wanted to succeed no matter what. Even if it was a little slow, he wanted to refine all the dregs and ensure that he could succeed in one go. He didn't want to be like Ningyu, who had to refine a second time. On the other hand, although Ren Xiangtian was a step behind Li Tongtian, He had also refined all the medicinal ingredients. Ren Xiangtian didn't rest. He immediately started refining the medicinal liquid for the second time like Li Tongtian. Whether Ning you can refine a supreme grade true martial dan or not, it's not up to you to tell him what to do. Fengzi scolded, if you dare to spout nonsense again, believe it or not, Hehe, little brother, don't be so hot-tempered at such a young age. At this moment, Old Tan smiled and interrupted Fengzi. He said, Ning Yu's first time refining the true martial dan has consumed too much energy. It's almost impossible for him to refine a second batch of true martial dan in such a short period of time, so what the third prince said is not wrong. Old Tan, I'm afraid you guessed wrong this time. Before Fengzi could refute, Ouyang Yuan said lightly, Ning Yu has already started refining the second batch of true martial dan. What? Hearing this, Old Tan quickly turned around and looked at Ning Yu. However, when he saw Ning Yu randomly throwing the medicinal ingredients into the cauldron, he couldn't help but burst into laughter. Ha ha ha. After laughing, Old Tan pointed at Ning Yu and said, Sixth Prince, is this what you meant by starting the second batch of true martial dan? Has he lost his mind this time, or is he suffering from epilepsy? He still dares to use this kind of refining method. TSK, I'm very impressed with his courage. From Old Tan's point of view, the reason why Ning Yu failed to refine the true martial dan for the first time was because there was something wrong with his refining method. Chapter 458. All failed ha ha ha. After Elder Tan's laughter, the third prince, Ouyang Hai, also laughed out loud. Bold indeed, getting crazier and crazier each time. Third brother, don't kick him when he's down. That's not very nice. The eldest prince, Ouyang Ming, waved his hand and said calmly. However, just when everyone thought that Ouyang Ming was right, Ouyang Ming changed the topic and smirked. Even if you want to kick him when he's down, you should wait until Ning Yu fails. It's too early to say that now. Yes. Big brother, you're right. I've learned my lesson, Ouyang Hai said with an exaggerated expression. Towards the end, even Ouyang Hai couldn't help but laugh out loud. What is Ning Yu doing? Li Tongtian's soul power was extremely strong. Even at the most crucial moment, he didn't forget to look at Ning Yu. When he saw Ning Yu's crazier actions, he couldn't help but mutter to himself. This kind of alchemy method wasn't completely undesirable, but it depended on what kind of pill was being refined. Based on Ning Yu's soul power and alchemy level, if he were to refine a first-grade or second-grade pill, he could still use this method. However, the true martial pill was a fourth-grade pill. If Ning Yu were to use this method, there was an 80% chance that he would fail. Ning Yu has been left behind. Now, let's see if he can refine a supreme true martial pill before Li Tongtian. Seeing that Ning Yu was using such a crazy method again, Ren Xiangtian immediately excluded him. He thought that Li Tongtian was his true rival. Indeed, even a 6th-grade or 7th-grade alchemist wouldn't dare to say that they could use this method to refine a supreme true martial pill. Unless one's control of soul power was at its peak, one could separate many strands of soul power to refine herbs at the same time. Otherwise, refining a supreme true martial pill would be harder than ascending to heaven. Fengzi, your relationship with Ning Yu is closer. Do you think he can succeed? Ouyang Yuan came in front of Fengzi and asked. That's hard to say. After all, the transcendent true martial dan is extremely difficult to refine. Taking a deep breath, Fengzi's expression turned serious. Don't be fooled by Li Tongtian and Ren Xiangtian's speed. It will be extremely difficult for them to refine true martial pills in one go. That's right, that's a supreme true martial dan, Li Tongtian and Ren Xiangtian. Holy shit. At the side, Zhu Jianming was just about to chime in when his expression changed slightly. He stared fixedly at Li Tongtian, who was not too far away, with a look of shock in his eyes. Rise. Li Tongtian let out a low growl as he slammed his palm heavily against the pill furnace. A pill with a smooth and round appearance flew out from the pill furnace. Pa! Li Tongtian's face lit up with joy as he leapt up and grabbed the pill firmly in his hands. Who would have thought that Li Tongtian would be the first to refine a transcendent martial pill? What's so strange about that? Ning Yu has already been left behind and Ren Xiangtian is still lacking. Naturally, Li Tongtian will be the first to refine a transcendent martial dan. Ren Xiangtian is almost there too. According to my estimation, he will only need 10 minutes at most to refine a transcendent martial dan. Sigh, what a pity. I won't be able to see Ren Xiangtian refine a transcendent martial dan today. When the other martial artists in the room saw that Li Tongtian had successfully refined a transcendent martial dan, they were no less astonished than Zhu Jianming. After all, a transcendent martial dan was extremely difficult to refine. If some 6th-tier alchemists knew that Li Tongtian could refine a transcendent martial dan so easily, they would probably vomit blood in anger. Look, Li Tongtian doesn't seem too happy. Why would he be unhappy after refining a transcendent martial dan? Is he too excited? That doesn't make sense. If I had refined a transcendent martial dan, I would definitely be jumping for joy. That's why you can't refine a transcendent martial dan. The chatter of the surrounding martial artists did not affect Li Tongtian at all. He raised his palm slightly and then smashed it down forcefully. Crack! In the next moment, a crisp sound rang out in the room. When the martial artists saw the smashed elixirs on the floor, they were once again dumbfounded. Li Tongtian was way too willful. The transcendent martial dan that he had just refined was smashed to pieces so easily. Wait a minute. Li Tongtian didn't refine a transcendent martial dan, but a supreme martial dan. Suddenly, a 4th-tier alchemist stared at the dregs of the elixirs on the floor and exclaimed, "What? Supreme martial dan?" A martial artist exclaimed. Obviously, the elixirs that Li Tongtian refined were of extremely high quality. They had already reached the peak of the supreme martial dan and were only one step away from the transcendent martial dan. What a pity. The 4th-tier alchemist nodded, then shook his head and said, "If I'm not wrong, something must have gone wrong at the last step, causing all his efforts to go to waste." I see. No wonder Li Tongtian smashed the elixirs. If it were me, I would have done the same. This feeling of falling from the clouds to the bottom of the valley is really worse than death. That's a little too much. You just didn't refine a transcendent martial dan. You still have one more chance and you're talking about worse than death. I despise you. Bang. The surrounding martial artists wanted to say something else, but they heard a dull thud. Then, Ren Xiangtian rose from the ground and did something unbelievable in front of everyone. He reached his hand into the cauldron and took out an elixir in no time. Transcendent martial dan? Who said that Ren Xiangtian would need another 10 minutes to refine a transcendent martial dan? Humph. Who knows, the elixir that Ren Xiangtian refined might not be a transcendent martial dan, but a supreme martial dan. The martial artist who spoke earlier sneered. Ha ha ha. Who would have thought that the first martial artist to refine a transcendent martial dan would be Ren Xiangtian? Not long ago, when Li Tongtian refined a transcendent martial dan, Ouyang Hai did not even have the chance to mock Ningyu before Li Tongtian smashed the elixir. Now that Ren Xiangtian had refined a transcendent martial dan, Ouyang Yuan naturally had to mock him. "Sixth brother, you've lost the bet. So, are you going to leave the room yourself, or should I invite you out?" You. Ouyang Yuan's face turned green. He had already guessed that Ningyu would not be able to refine a transcendent martial dan. However, he could not bring himself to say it out loud. However, he wouldn't agree to leave the room no matter what. Leaving the room would mean giving up on the title of Crown Prince. Giving up on the title of Crown Prince would mean that he would be ostracized by the eldest and third princes. He might not even be able to live after that. After all, the royal family did not care about relationships. The winner takes all. Bang! Ouyang Yuan's expression satisfied Ouyang Hai. However, just as he was about to force Ouyang Yuan to leave the room, another dull thud came from the room. Chapter 459. Chapter 459, Dish Illusionist Shu. In the next moment, a pill shot out of the cauldron, and Ningyu grabbed it firmly in his hand. Ningyu also made a supreme true martial dan? Isn't this too unbelievable? It has only been 7 or 8 minutes since Ningyu made the second batch of true martial dan. How could Ningyu make a supreme true martial dan? Let's wait and see. Maybe Ning Yu has really made a supreme true martial Dan. At this time, Ning Yu refined a true martial Dan, which was really beyond everyone's expectations. However, no one believed that Ning Yu could really make a supreme true martial Dan. After all, with such a crazy method, if he could really make a supreme true martial Dan in such a short time, he would really be a genius among geniuses. Humph. Not to mention whether the true martial Dan refined by Ning Yu is transcendent grade or not, even if it is a transcendent grade true martial Dan, it is impossible for him to win. The third prince Ouyang Hai sneered, Ren Xiangtian has already made a supreme true martial Dan before him, Third prince, how do you know I am doomed to fail? Holding the true martial Dan in his hand, Ning Yu slowly walked towards Ouyang Hai, interrupted him and said lightly, if I win, what will you do? This is impossible. Ren Xiangtian has already. Could it be? Ouyang Hai shouted. However, before his voice faded, his eyes widened and revealed a look of disbelief. Nothing is impossible. Ning Yu placed the true martial pill in his hand on the table and said to Ren Xiangtian, take out the pill in your hand and let me have a look. If you can really refine a transcendent grade true martial pill, I will concede defeat. Hearing Ning Yu's words, Ren Xiangtian's face turned gloomy. He stood there without moving. He knew the problem of the true martial Dan better than anyone else. Judging from the appearance, the true martial Dan he refined was infinitely close to the supreme grade. Even the soul force of the martial artists who had not reached level 6 could hardly find out that he was not refining a supreme grade true martial Dan, but a supreme grade true martial Dan. It could be said that if he didn't admit to it, perhaps only Ning Yu and Li Tongtian would have a sliver of a chance to know about it. On one hand, it was the outcome of the battle, and on the other hand, it was the condemnation and unease in his heart. At this moment, Ren Xiangtian found it extremely difficult to make a decision. Kacha. After pondering for 3 seconds, Ren Xiangtian suddenly did something that shocked everyone. Just like Li Tongtian, he raised his wrist and slammed it down heavily. A crisp sound, accompanied by the sound of a pill shattering, rang out in the private room. Why did Ren Xiangtian break the true martial pill? Could it be that what he refined wasn't a supreme grade pill, but a supreme grade pill? It is obviously a transcendent grade true martial Dan. As a 4th grade alchemist, how could I not be able to distinguish between a transcendent grade Dan and a supreme grade Dan? But, why did Ren Xiangtian smash the pill? I don't know about that. Maybe he wasn't satisfied with it. Are you kidding me? Who wouldn't be satisfied with a transcendent grade true martial Dan? Are you out of your mind? From the moment he raised the pill, Ren Xiangtian knew that he had lost today. Taking a deep breath, Ren Xiangtian said in a low voice, Ning Yu, you are the winner in today's alchemy competition. Li Tongtian took a step forward and said, Ning Yu, I, Li Tongtian, have never been convinced by anyone in my life. Today, I'm convinced by you. I look forward to our next battle. Whoosh. The martial artists in the private room were not stupid. Hearing Li Tongtian and Ren Xiangtian's words, even a fool could tell that Ning Yu had won. Not only did he win, but he had also won the respect of 2 alchemy geniuses. This was a rare thing. One had to know that Ren Xiangtian was a rare talent in the Alchemy Union and was known as the favorite to win the competition. Who would have thought that he would lose to Ning Yu? As for Li Tongtian, judging from the alchemy skills he had displayed, he was no weaker than Ren Xiangtian. The fact that 2 geniuses were convinced by Ning Yu was enough to prove that Ning Yu had the ability to do so. As for Ren Xiangtian and Li Tongtian's acknowledgement, Ning Yu did not take it to heart. What he was concerned about was what Li Tongtian had promised him in the beginning. Li Tongtian, can you tell me where the mysterious forces from Snow Domain Pavilion are from? Ning Yu's mouth was slightly agape as he spoke to Li Tongtian telepathically. Such an important matter could not be heard by anyone else. I can tell you that they are from, Li Tongtian was not someone who would go back on his words. However, just as he was about to tell Ning Yu, he raised an eyebrow and looked towards the entrance of the second Yuan room. There, 2 figures slowly appeared. Swoosh. Apart from Li Tongtian, the rest of the martial artists in the room became respectful when they saw the figure at the front. Father. The eldest prince and the rest hurried over and exclaimed in surprise, "Why didn't you tell us in advance that you were coming? It would have been better for me." The middle-aged man at the front waved his hand, gesturing for the eldest prince and the rest to keep quiet. Then, the middle-aged man walked towards Ningyu, one step at a time. Not long after, the middle-aged man stood in front of Ningyu and looked at Ningyu from head to toe. Cultivation is blurry, soul power is blurry. As the middle-aged man was looking at Ningyu, Ningyu was also looking at him. Ningyu was surprised to find that the middle-aged man seemed to be wrapped in a layer of white fog. Whether it was his soul power or his cultivation, it was difficult for Ningyu to detect him. There were two possibilities for this situation. Firstly, the middle-aged man's soul power and cultivation were very strong. They were so strong that it was terrifying. Secondly, the middle-aged man had a technique to hide his aura and soul power. This caused Zhu Donghuang to be unable to detect his cultivation and the strength of his soul power. No matter which possibility it was enough to show how powerful the middle-aged man was. "Ningyu, I said before that as long as you can defeat Li Tongtian and the rest, I will let you see the illusionist who set up the illusion in Yuan Room 3. The middle-aged man was the first to break the silence. He said calmly, "Fu Guosheng, come out. Let Ningyu have a taste of your illusion." Sho. Actually, when the middle-aged man entered the room, Ningyu had already noticed the skinny man behind him. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, the skinny man did not hesitate at all. He walked directly in front of Ningyu and stood in front of Ningyu. Ningyu's eyes widened slightly as he looked at the skinny man. This glance caused Ningyu's heart to skip a beat. He felt that everything in front of him had changed. At this moment, he was at the edge of a cliff. If he took another step back, he would fall off the cliff. It really is a high-level illusion. After a short moment of shock, Ningyu's expression was emotionless as he said calmly, "Buzz buzz." Just as Ningyu finished his sentence, the space in front of him rippled. Then, a martial artist slowly appeared in front of him. This illusion of mine has the ability to confuse one's mind. Chapter 460. Breaking the illusion. An illusion is an illusion after all. As long as I guard my mind, I won't be affected. Looking at Fu Guosheng, who was not far away, Ningyu said in a deep voice, "Although the illusion you set up is a high-level illusion, it doesn't affect me at all." "Is that so?" Fu Guosheng raised his eyebrows and his body became illusory. Soon, Fu Guosheng completely disappeared from Ningyu's sight. Roar. In the next moment, a loud roar was heard. Then, Ningyu saw a huge tiger appear at the place where Fu Guosheng disappeared. "Ningyu, I want to see if you will be affected by the illusion." The tiger opened its mouth and roared at the sky. Then, it let out Fu Guosheng's voice. Swoosh. After the roar, the tiger stomped on the ground and charged at Ningyu at an astonishing speed. Rustle. The tiger was extremely fast. Wherever it passed, the wind whistled and rustled. Transforming into a tiger, Ningyu's eyes revealed a grave expression when he saw the tiger constantly charging at him. Although he knew that the tiger was transformed by Fu Guosheng, the realism of the tiger was completely beyond his expectations. Solitaire. Ningyu narrowed his eyes and the soul-severing sword appeared in his hand. With a thrust of the sword, a shocking sword wave formed and slashed at the tiger's body. Kai. Solitaire was very powerful. The moment it came into contact with the tiger, it cut the tiger into two. Swoosh. However, before Ningyu could be excited, he saw the tiger merge into one and charge at him again. Damn it. Cursing, Ningyu did not dare to be slow. He quickly gathered his primordial chi on his fist and met the tiger head-on. Puff. This time, the tiger was pushed back several feet. On the other hand, Ningyu took a small step back. Even so, Ningyu broke into a cold sweat for himself. If he took another small step back, he would fall off the cliff. The illusions set up by high-ranked illusionists were extremely terrifying. The injuries sustained within the illusions would be brought out of the illusions. One could imagine that once Ningyu fell off the cliff, even if he didn't die, he would be severely injured. "Ningyu, what do you think of my illusion?" After gaining the upper hand, Fu Guosheng did not continue to attack. Instead, he appeared in front of Ningyu and said with a smile, "In front of my illusion, why did you not guard your mind? Looks like I've underestimated you. You're not only an advanced illusionist, but you're also just a step away from advancing to a human-level illusionist." Ningyu's face was extremely cold as he said in a deep voice. The ranks of illusionists were extremely strict. Every level of difference in rank would result in a world of difference in the quality of the illusions created. Below the advanced illusionist were the beginner illusionist and the intermediate illusionist. As for above the advanced illusionist, it was the human-level illusionist, earth-level illusionist, as well as the even higher heaven-level illusionist. In his previous life, the illusionist with a level 9 soul force strength that Ningyu encountered was precisely a heaven-level illusionist. And Fu Guosheng's soul force strength was peak level 6. Just a step away from advancing to level 7, which was to advance to become a human-level illusionist. You even know about a human-level illusionist. Indeed, not simple. At this moment, Fu Guosheng finally started to take Ningyu seriously. After all, martial artists who knew about human-level illusionists were few and far between. Generally speaking, in the understanding of many martial artists, illusionists were only divided into beginner, intermediate, and advanced ranks. The higher ranks of illusionists, they had never even heard of them before. "Ningyu, how about we make a bet?" Suddenly, Fu Guosheng seemed to have heard something. His brows raised, and he said to Ningyu, "If you win, not only can I release you out of the illusions, I can even release Lu Wei and the rest from the illusions." On the other hand, speaking up to here, Fu Guosheng paused slightly, then continued, "If you lose, you have to submit to me unconditionally." "Submit to you?" Ningyu said with a frown. "That's right. If you lose, you have to submit to me." Fu Guosheng nodded and said, "If possible, as a constraint, I hope that you will swear a heavenly Tao oath." "You think that I will definitely lose?" Ningyu said coolly. From Fu Guosheng's expression and attitude, Ningyu could clearly feel that he thought that he could not win. Since that was the case, he could make this bet with Fu Guosheng. "It's not what I think." Fu Guosheng pursed his lips and said with a faint smile, "But you will definitely fall." "Enough nonsense. You and I each swear a heavenly Tao oath." Ningyu waved his hand and interrupted Fu Guosheng's words. His words being interrupted by Ningyu, Fu Guosheng revealed an unhappy look. But he did not get angry. Instead, he swore a heavenly Tao oath in front of Ningyu. Since Fu Guosheng already swore a heavenly Tao oath, Ningyu was not willing to fall behind either and directly swore a heavenly Tao oath. "Ningyu, you have 15 minutes to break the illusion. I wish you good luck." When Fu Guosheng's voice faded, his body became illusory again and gradually fused together with the air. Ningyu sucked in a deep breath. The soul force in his body poured out in full force and began to probe carefully, hoping to find a way to break the illusion. Swish. When Ningyu attempted to break the illusion, Fu Guosheng's eyes suddenly snapped open and said to the middle-aged man respectfully, "Your Majesty, Ningyu has already been trapped in the illusion by me." "How long do you give him?" The middle-aged man said coolly. 15 minutes, Fu Guosheng hurriedly said. 15 minutes, her. The middle-aged man's brows locked tightly and fell into contemplation. In his opinion, with the strength of Ningyu's soul force, it would be very difficult to break the illusion in 15 minutes. Thinking of this, the middle-aged man turned around and walked towards Fengzi. After a while, the middle-aged man arrived in front of Fengzi and said, "You're from the Feng clan of the Lanqing country?" The middle-aged man's tone was unquestionable, giving Fengzi a deep pressure, causing him to have no choice but to answer honestly, "Yes, I'm from the Feng clan of the Lanqing country." "What is the cultivation of your clan's ancestor?" The middle-aged man asked again. "I'm not sure about the specific cultivation, but 3 years ago, the ancestor's cultivation had already reached a level." Fengzi opened his mouth and said in a low voice. However, when he mentioned the ancestor's specific cultivation, the 3 words suddenly became very vague, and the surrounding warriors did not hear it. His cultivation was already so high 3 years ago. From this, it seems that the Feng clan's ancestor's cultivation must be even more terrifying now. The others did not hear Fengzi's words because the middle-aged man had done something to it. However, he heard it clearly. One more question. Tell me everything you know about Ningyu. After thinking for a while, the middle-aged man continued. I'm not very clear about the specifics. I only know that Ningyu is very strong. An ordinary yin-yang realm. Fengzi seemed to be controlled as he wanted to tell the middle-aged man everything he knew. Crack. Chapter 461. One day and one night. Crack crack. A cracking sound rang out, followed closely by two more cracking sounds. Hearing these two cracking sounds, Fengzi's body trembled once more, then he completely woke up. What happened just now? After waking up, Fengzi's eyes revealed a confused look. He looked left and right and said doubtfully, "Why do I feel like I'm being controlled by someone else?" Poochie. Just at this moment, the sound of blood spurting out mixed with some exclamations resounded in the room. Fu Guosheng. The martial artist who spurted out blood was none other than Fu Guosheng. Ningyu, you actually broke my illusion? Fu Guosheng's eyes widened, his face filled with stupefaction. He never thought that Ningyu would be able to break the illusion he set up in such a short time. Even a yin-yang realm martial artist would not dare to say that they could come out of the illusion so quickly, let alone Ningyu, whose cultivation was only at the late stage of the true martial realm. For Ningyu to be able to do this, it was enough to show that Ningyu's strength was extremely terrifying. I said before, as long as you guard your mind, you won't be affected. After coming out of the illusion, Ningyu glanced at Fu Guosheng, then came to Fengzi's side. Placing his palm on Fengzi's shoulder, Ningyu quietly separated a wisp of soul force and entered Fengzi's body. No wonder your mind was affected, so someone left a wisp of soul force in your body. As the soul force entered Fengzi's body, Ningyu's expression turned solemn. Needless to say, the soul force in Fengzi's body was definitely left behind by the middle-aged man, who was the current emperor. As for what the emperor's intentions were, it was obvious that he definitely wanted to know the secrets regarding him. Break for me. Suddenly, Ningyu separated another wisp of soul force and entered Fengzi's body. Together with the first wisp of soul force, it started a great battle with the soul force left behind by the emperor in Fengzi's body. Crack. As the soul force left behind by the emperor was relatively weak, it was not long before it was surrounded and turned into nothingness. The dissipation of this soul force did not affect the emperor. Instead, it made him look up to Ningyu. To be able to annihilate his soul force, it could be seen that Ningyu's soul force was still very strong. Your Majesty, I wonder if it's possible to have Fu Guosheng remove the illusion in the third Yuan room and release Lu Wei and the others. Cupping his hands together, Ningyu said, Lu Wei's cultivation is only at the Xiantian realm. It's almost impossible for her to escape from the illusion set up by a high-level illusionist. No problem. Fu Guosheng, remove the illusion in room 3 and let the cultivators inside out. The emperor smiled and waved his hand at Fu Guosheng behind him. Remember, don't hurt anyone. Understood. Fu Guosheng glared fiercely at Ningyu, then turned around and left. The emperor's generous action caused Ningyu to frown slightly. He felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. Logically speaking, the emperor had paid such a huge price to set up the illusion. There was no reason for it to be removed so easily. Originally, Ningyu thought that he would have to bargain with the emperor. Who would have thought that the emperor would be so magnanimous? Just now, Ningyu defeated Li Tongtian and Ren Xiangtian in the alchemy assessment. Who else wants to compete with Ningyu in alchemy? After Fu Guosheng left, the emperor paced back and forth in the room, sweeping his gaze across the cultivators. Then, he said in a deep voice, if there's no one else, I hereby announce that Ningyu is the final winner of the alchemy assessment. Not long ago, Ningyu and Li Tongtian had competed in alchemy. Many cultivators in the room had witnessed it. Among them, the highest-ranked cultivator was only a 4th-grade alchemist. They might not even be able to refine a supreme-grade true martial pill, let alone a supreme-grade true martial pill. Compete with Ningyu? They would lose terribly. They might even lose their underwear. Alright, I hereby announce that the winner of the alchemy assessment is Ningyu. He can cultivate in the ice manner for a day and a night unconditionally. Whoosh. As soon as the emperor finished speaking, the spacious number 2 yuan private room instantly fell silent. Unconditionally entering the ice manner to cultivate for a day and a night. This treatment was enviable. In the alchemy assessment, Ningyu is the final winner. Now, let's begin the martial assessment. Obviously, the emperor was very satisfied with the reactions of the warriors. He nodded and continued, the martial arts test is very simple. 2 people will fight each other. The one who can last until the end will become the second warrior to enter the ice mansion unconditionally. The emperor's words ignited the flames in the hearts of the cultivators. Although they could not defeat Ningyu in the alchemy assessment, they still had a chance in the martial assessment. Oh, right. Suddenly, the emperor seemed to think of something and continued, although Ningyu won in the alchemy assessment, he can still participate in the martial assessment. If he can last until the end of the martial assessment, he can stay in the ice manor for 2 days and 2 nights. The flames in the hearts of the cultivators had been ignited, but the emperor's words were like a bucket of cold water poured on their hearts, directly extinguishing the flames in their heart. Not only was Ningyu skilled in alchemy, but his martial strength was also exceptionally strong. Among the cultivators invited by the emperor, except for Ningyu, who else could take a blow from Elder Tan, who was in the early stage of Yin-Yang realm and not be at a disadvantage? Ningyu frowned. He didn't know what the emperor wanted. From the beginning until now, the emperor seemed to be very eager to let him enter the ice manor to cultivate. Why? Shaking his head, Ningyu put these thoughts aside for now. The first martial assessment, Fengzi vs. Zhu Jianming. The emperor did not ask for Ningyu's opinion, and directly said, if the winner is not decided within 10 minutes, then the one with the lower cultivation wins. Swoosh. As the emperor's voice fell, Zhu Jianming took a step forward and said in a deep voice, I choose to admit defeat. At the entrance of Chenyuan restaurant, Zhu Jianming had already fought with Fengzi. At that time, Fengzi's every attack was aimed at his right hand, causing him to be defeated not long after. Zhu Jianming was not a fool. Fengzi could beat him last time, so he should be able to beat him this time. Therefore, he chose to admit defeat. He understood the principle of where there's life, there's hope. If he forcefully fought and his right hand was crippled, it would not be worth it. Zhu Jianming admits defeat. Next, Fengzi vs. Ningyu. Almost at the same time that Zhu Jianming admitted defeat, the emperor announced the candidates for the second battle. Ningyu vs. Fengzi. Ningyu was in the late stage of the true martial realm, while Fengzi was in the early stage of the primal core realm. This was a battle that seemed to have no suspense, but everyone knew that the final winner would definitely be Ningyu. I choose to admit defeat. The result was not out of everyone's expectations. Fengzi directly chose to admit defeat, without any fancy moves. Zhu Jianming's cultivation was far higher than Fengzi's, but he admitted defeat. Fengzi's cultivation was far higher than Ningyu's, but he also admitted defeat to Ningyu. Chapter 462. Fighting Ouyang Hai. Since Zhu Jianming and Fengzi have chosen to admit defeat, then the next match will be between Ningyu and... The emperor slightly frowned, his eyes slowly swept across the crowd, and finally stopped at the third prince, Ouyang Hai, and said, Higher, fight. Hearing that the next match was between him and Ningyu, the third prince, Ouyang Hai's complexion changed dramatically. Although he had always wanted to have a real fight with Ningyu, he was very clear about the gap between him and Ningyu. Even if Ningyu only used 50% of his strength, he was still not his opponent. Moreover, he and Ningyu were already mortal enemies. If he fought with Ningyu at this time, wouldn't he be seeking death? It was conceivable that Ningyu would not be lenient. In my opinion, the third prince will definitely admit defeat. I also think so. The third prince is only at the peak of the true martial realm. How could he be Ningyu's opponent? It's hard to say. After all, the third prince represents the royal family. If he admitted defeat like this, wouldn't he be a disgrace to the royal family? Yeah, if I were the third prince, I would not admit defeat no matter what. Originally, Ouyang Hai was ready to admit defeat, but after hearing the surrounding martial artists' discussion, he swallowed his words. These martial artists were too much. They actually said he represented the royal family. If that was the case, if he admitted defeat again, it would really be a disgrace to the royal family, to the emperor. Ouyang Hai did not care about losing his own face, but he could not afford to lose the royal family and the emperor's face. Therefore, he clenched his teeth and fiercely said, "Ningyu, others may be afraid of you, but I am not. What does it have to do with me whether you are afraid of me or not?" Ningyu shrugged and lightly said, "If you want to fight, hurry up, I don't have time to waste with you here. You are going too far." Ouyang Hai did not expect Ningyu to look down on him so much. For a moment, he was filled with hatred and rushed towards Ningyu. Whoosh! In order to deal a fatal blow to Ningyu, Ouyang Hai had practically used all his strength. His speed had also reached the limit of what he could achieve at this stage. Maybe Ouyang Hai can really exchange a few moves with Ningyu. It is possible. No matter what, Ouyang Hai is also a martial artist at the peak of the true martial realm. His strength cannot be underestimated. That's right, Ouyang Hai is a member of the royal family, he should have. What? When everyone saw Ouyang Hai rushing towards Ningyu, they began to discuss among themselves. However, before the last cultivator could finish his words, his eyes were filled with shock. Bang! With a muffled sound, Ouyang Hai's body fell backward like a kite with a broken string. Shoo! Just as Ouyang Hai was about to crash into the wall, Old Tan leaped up and caught him firmly. "Ningyu, you." After being punched in the chest by Ningyu, Ouyang Hai felt that he had lost all face and shouted angrily, "You are not skilled enough and do not know how to endure. It is easy for you to be blinded by hatred." The emperor directly interrupted Ouyang Hai and said coldly, "Looks like I shouldn't have let you stay in the capital for so long. Go and prepare, we will leave for Shishan City in a few days." Yes. If he was interrupted by someone else, Ouyang Hai might not be happy. However, the one who interrupted him was the current emperor, so he did not have any temper. Glaring fiercely at Ningyu, Ouyang Hai turned around and left the number 2 Yuan room. "Ningyu, can you still do it?" After Ouyang Hai left, the emperor asked Ningyu. "Why not? I can do it at any time." Ningyu said in a deep voice. "That's fine. The next match is between Ningyu and Li Nan." The emperor said again. "I choose to admit defeat." Li Nan was very smart and chose to admit defeat. His cultivation was only at the middle stage of the primal core stage. Although he was a few levels higher than Ningyu, his strength was also a few levels lower than Ningyu's. It could be said that if Ningyu attacked with all his strength, it would be difficult for him to resist even one move. In this world, people who knew their limits usually did not end up too badly. Li Nan admits defeat. The next match is between Ningyu and Ren Xiangtian. Almost at the same time when Li Nan admitted defeat, the emperor announced the candidates for the next match. Ningyu against Ren Xiangtian. "It's finally my turn," Ren Xiangtian murmured with a fervent look in his eyes. Ever since he lost to Ningyu in alchemy, Ren Xiangtian had always wanted to compete with Ningyu in martial arts. Now that the opportunity had come, it was inevitable that he was a little excited. Ren Xiangtian is a peerless genius of the Alchemy Union. This battle is going to be interesting. Yes, Ren Xiangtian might be able to compete with Ningyu. It will probably be a little difficult. Ren Xiangtian's alchemy skills are very high, but in terms of martial arts strength, he might not be able to beat Ningyu. The surrounding martial artists were talking about it again. However, the general consensus was that Ren Xiangtian was very likely to be no match for Ningyu. "Ningyu, you don't have to hold back. I want to see your true strength." Ren Xiangtian took a deep breath and said, "I admire you for beating me in alchemy. If you can beat me in martial arts as well, I, Ren Xiangtian, will completely admire you. Don't worry, I won't hold back against an opponent worthy of respect," Ningyu said in a low voice. "Good, you're really straightforward." With a cold look in his eyes, Ren Xiangtian immediately rushed towards Ningyu at an extremely fast speed. Kai Kai. Ren Xiangtian's speed was so fast that there was even a hissing sound from the friction with the air. His finally revealed his cultivation level. Peak Primal Core, Feeling the powerful aura exuding from Ren Xiangtian, Ningyu's eyes revealed a serious look. Ren Xiangtian was different from Zhu Jianming. Although they were both peak primal core martial artists, Ren Xiangtian was more than a level stronger than Zhu Jianming. After all, Ren Xiangtian's soul power was much stronger than Zhu Jianming's. Excluding soul power, Zhu Jianming could still compete with Ren Xiangtian, but with soul power, he was definitely no match for Ren Xiangtian. Ningyu, eat my fist, immovable King Fist. Just as Ningyu was slightly stunned, Ren Xiangtian had already arrived in front of Ningyu. His fist contained a violent wave of yuan qi as it slammed into Ningyu's chest. Underworld dominating palm. In the face of such a fierce punch from Ren Xiangtian, Ningyu did not dare to be careless. He immediately gathered the yuan qi in his sea of consciousness on his palm and pushed it out, colliding with Ren Xiangtian's fist. Bang! The fist and the palm collided, accompanied by a muffled sound, and then the two figures simultaneously retreated. Ren Xiangtian retreated to the edge of the room before he stabilized himself. However, a serious look appeared on his face. On the other hand, Ningyu only retreated 3 steps before he stabilized himself. At the same time, his expression did not change, as if he was not affected at all. The first exchange between the two sides was obvious. Chapter 463. Requesting a duel. No, if I'm not wrong, this is merely 50% of Ningyu's strength. Elder Tan had exchanged blows with Ningyu not long ago, so he had a very good understanding of Ningyu's strength. Although Ningyu had gained the upper hand in the first exchange with Ren Xiangtian, Elder Tan was very clear that Ningyu had only used 50% of his strength at most. In that case, isn't Ren Xiangtian bound to lose? The Emperor's expression was a little ugly as he asked in a low voice. In this private room, he was most optimistic about the 2 martial artists who could contend with Ningyu. One was Ren Xiangtian, and the other was Li Tongtian. Relatively speaking, Li Tongtian's strength was slightly stronger than Ren Xiangtian, but it wasn't to the extent of defying the heavens. If Ren Xiangtian was easily defeated by Ningyu, then it would be very difficult for Li Tongtian to defeat Ningyu. It's hard to say. As a peerless genius of the Alchemy Union, it's impossible for Ren Xiangtian to not have a trump card. Elder Tan shook his head and said, if Ningyu wants to defeat Ren Xiangtian, he has to use at least 80% of his strength. Otherwise, it's impossible for him to defeat Ren Xiangtian. Bang! Just as Elder Tan and the Emperor were conversing, Ningyu and Ren Xiangtian clashed once again. When the second fist collided, Ningyu and Ren Xiangtian each took a few steps back before they could stabilize themselves. Only this time, Ningyu took 3 steps back while Ren Xiangtian only took 5 steps back. Ha ha ha, it's been a long time since I've fought to my heart's content. Ningyu, take another punch from me. After the 2 punches, Ren Xiangtian rose from the ground and charged at Ningyu while laughing heartily. It's getting more and more powerful. Looking at Ren Xiangtian who was approaching him and the violent yuan qi contained in Ren Xiangtian's fists, Ningyu revealed a solemn expression. The power of Ren Xiangtian's fists was getting stronger and stronger. He only used 30% of his strength to block the first punch. He used 40% of his strength to block the second punch. If he didn't use 50% of his strength for this third punch, it would be hard to block it. Dark Tyrant Palm. In the next moment, Ningyu's eyes turned cold. He quickly waved his palm and launched another palm attack. Bang! Another muffled bang resounded, and then both Ningyu and Ren Xiangtian took a few steps back. Look! Ningyu and Ren Xiangtian fought to a draw. Ren Xiangtian seems to be getting stronger. Of course. You might not know this, but Ren Xiangtian used a heaven-ranked martial technique, the immovable wheel King Fist. What's so special about the immovable wheel King Fist? A martial artist asked. Hihi, let me explain. Hearing the discussions of the crowd, the first prince smiled and said, immovable King Fist, a superior grade heaven-ranked martial technique. There are a total of 10 punches. The most special thing about the immovable King Fist is that each punch is stronger than the last. The power of the last punch can even break space for a short period of time. Whoosh! As the first prince finished speaking, the surrounding martial artists were in an uproar. Breaking space could only be done by a yin-yang realm martial artist or some extremely abnormal peak primal core martial artist. The immovable wheel king fist was so powerful. It could break space for a short period of time. Humph. Although the immovable wheel king fist is powerful, Ren Xiangtian can only perform up to 5 punches at most. Fengzi snorted and said, the 5th punch of the immovable wheel king fist is still far from enough to defeat Ningyu. Hearing Fengzi's words, the first prince was not angry. Instead, he raised his eyebrows and smiled evilly. Why don't we make a bet? Bet on what? Fengzi said coldly. Simple, bet on whether Ren Xiangtian can perform. The corner of Fengzi's mouth curled up. Just as he was about to say what the bet was, a look of extreme shock appeared on his face. Bang! On the other side of the room, Ningyu raised his speed to the limit and sidestepped Ren Xiangtian's 4th punch. Then, Ningyu threw a punch that landed squarely on Ren Xiangtian's back. Ningyu used 60% of his strength in this punch, and Ren Xiangtian's attention was on the immovable wheel king fist, so he was knocked back several feet by Ningyu and hit the wall of the room. Fart! Ren Xiangtian spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, his face slightly pale. He lost. Ren Xiangtian also lost to Ningyu. Ren Xiangtian lost to Ningyu, then who else here is a match for Ningyu? I'm afraid only Li Tongtian can compete with him. Ren Xiangtian's defeat caused an uproar in the second Yuan room. Based on the performance of Ningyu, it was very likely that he would also come out on top in the martial arts assessment. In that case, Ningyu would be able to stay in the Ice Mansion for 2 days and 2 nights. Your Highness, what did you want to bet with me? I didn't hear you clearly just now, can you say it again? At this moment, Fengzi came in front of the eldest prince and said with a smile. You. The eldest prince's face was livid with anger, but at the same time, he was glad that he didn't say the contents of the bet. Otherwise, wouldn't he be so embarrassed? He didn't expect Ningyu to defeat Ren Xiangtian so quickly, and the victory was so sudden. Ningyu, I'm completely convinced this time. Ren Xiangtian stood up from the ground, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and said to Ningyu. However, he quickly changed the topic and said in a low voice, but don't let your guard down. I'm looking forward to fighting with you in the alchemy competition. I'm afraid it won't be so easy for you to defeat me then. I'll be waiting for you, Ningyu said solemnly. Although Ningyu had defeated Ren Xiangtian in both martial arts and alchemy, he knew very well that Ren Xiangtian was not a simple person. The strength of a 5th-grade soul power and the martial arts of a peak primal core practitioner. There were still a few days before the alchemy competition. If Ren Xiangtian improved by then, it would be very difficult for him to defeat Ren Xiangtian. Goodbye. Ren Xiangtian cupped his fists at Ningyu, then bid farewell to the emperor and left the private room without looking back. Ren Xiangtian's departure caused the other martial artists in the private room to become serious. I admit defeat. Before long, an early primal core martial artist admitted defeat and left the private room. I admit defeat too. I give up. I give up. After the first martial artist admitted defeat, it seemed to cause a chain reaction. Following that, most of the martial artists in the private room who hadn't fought with Ningyu chose to admit defeat. Of course, there were still 3 who didn't admit defeat. One was the first prince, another was Li Tongtian, the last was the 3rd prince, Ouyang Yuan. Father, I request to fight in the next match. Suddenly, the first prince stepped forward and knelt on one knee in front of the emperor. He said in a low voice, I want to have a martial arts duel with Ningyu. Huh! The first prince's sudden action caused the emperor to frown slightly in surprise. But very quickly, he recovered and was happy for the first prince's quick wit. Ningyu was at his weakest now, and the first prince's request to have a duel with Ningyu was undoubtedly the best opportunity. Chapter 464. 3 moves whoosh. The first prince's unreasonable request instantly caused an uproar in the room. How could there be such a shameless person in this world? Ningyu had just gone through a great battle, so he was definitely not in his peak condition. The first prince's request to spar with Ningyu was obviously an opportunistic move. Whoosh. The martial artists in the room once again shifted their gaze to the emperor, trying to see if he would agree to the first prince's request. Ningyu, do you want to take a break? The emperor did not answer the first prince immediately, but looked at Ningyu instead. As the emperor of the Great Xia Kingdom, Ouyang was very smart. He knew that if he agreed to the first prince's request now, it would undoubtedly leave a bad impression in the hearts of the genius martial artists. Although he did not really care about the bad impression, it was better not to. There's no need for that. Since the first prince is so interested, I'll spar with him. How could Ningyu not know the emperor's intention? As the saying went, the talented were bold. Although he had consumed a lot of energy when he fought with Ren Xiangtian, it was still relatively easy for him to fight with the first prince. Ha ha ha, heroes indeed come from the young. Let's not waste any more time. Hurry up and fight. I'll be the judge. After receiving the confirmation from Ningyu, Ouyang laughed out loud and said, don't overdo it. Remember not to hurt your opponent. Yes. The first prince Ouyang cupped his fists, then turned to Ningyu and said, you've consumed a lot of energy, so I'll let you have 3 moves first. Are you sure you want to let me have 3 moves first? Ningyu hesitated as if he did not hear the first prince's words. Cut the crap. I've made a promise. Oh no. Ouyang was obviously a little impatient. However, before he could finish his words, his eyes widened and he quickly retreated. He saw Ningyu rising from the ground and appearing in front of him at a shocking speed. Damn it! Ouyang cursed and raised his right hand, which collided with Ningyu's fist. Bang! Next, a clear sound was heard, then Ouyang body fell backward like a kite with a broken string. Shio! Elder Tan reacted quickly and caught Ouyang just as his back was about to hit the wall. Ningyu, you cheated. Once he stabilized himself, he pushed Elder Tan away and pointed at Ningyu. How dare you sneak an attack on me? Sigh, this kind of consensual thing, how can it be considered a sneak attack? At most, it can only be said that you are not skilled enough. Ningyu waved his hand and said indifferently, you said that you would give me 3 moves. This is only the first move. There are still 2 more moves. Are you ready? You. Ouyang's face turned green when he heard what Ningyu said, and he wanted so badly to kill Ningyu right away. However, he knew that he couldn't do that. After all, he had promised to take 3 hits from Ningyu, but now he had only taken 1. Come on, there are still 2 more moves. Ouyang took a deep breath and calmed down. Ouyang's calmness was a little scary, and it even made Ningyu feel a little dazed. Did Ouyang take the wrong medicine? Otherwise, how could he be so calm? Suddenly, Ningyu's heart trembled, and his face was gloomy. This was because Ningyu discovered a special aura on the first prince, and this aura seemed to be somewhat similar to Elder Tan's. If it wasn't for Ningyu's strong soul perception, he definitely wouldn't have discovered this clue. Eat my second punch. Even though he had discovered something unusual on the first prince, Ningyu couldn't expose it. The only thing he could do now was to defeat the first prince within 3 moves. Otherwise, there was a high possibility of unforeseen events. Come at me. Facing Ningyu's second punch, the first prince did not retreat, but advanced instead. He took a step forward, and his fist collided with Ningyu's fist. Bam! This time, the first prince did not retreat even half a step. Instead, it was Ningyu who took a few steps back before he could stabilize himself. What's going on? How could Ningyu be at a disadvantage in the second punch? Seeing that Ningyu was at a disadvantage, Fengzi's expression changed drastically, and he revealed a look of disbelief. He was well aware of the first prince's strength. The first prince was only slightly stronger than him, and even if Fengzi used his trump card, the outcome of the battle was still unknown. It could be said that if Ningyu wanted to defeat the first prince, it would be as easy as blowing off dust. Why was Ningyu at a disadvantage in the second exchange? The first prince's strength seems to have increased by quite a bit in an instant. At the side, Li Tongtian frowned, and he vaguely felt that something was wrong. Li Tongtian's soul perception was not weak, and it was even on par with Ningyu's. If Ningyu could sense the difference in the first prince, Li Tongtian would naturally be able to as well. However, Li Tongtian was not very familiar with the unique aura on Old Tan. He only knew that the first prince's strength had increased, but he did not know that it was due to Old Tan's help. Impossible. Big brother can't possibly be this strong. The sixth prince, Ouyang Yuan, could not help but shake his head and exclaim. As he was fighting for the position of crown prince, Ouyang Yuan was very familiar with the first prince's strength. The first prince was much stronger than him, but compared to Ningyu, the difference was like heaven and earth. Not to mention one first prince, even if there were 5 or 10 of them, they would not be a match for Ningyu. Your Majesty, should we severely injure Ningyu, or, on the other side, Old Tan stretched out his palm and drew a line across his neck. Don't act rashly. What you need to do is to let your soul power enter Ningyu's body and go into hibernation. I need to know what he's going to do next. Ouyang Ba interrupted Old Tan and said in a deep voice. Perhaps I can find the key to break that formation from Ningyu. Ouyang Ba mumbled. Ningyu, there's still one last move. Hurry up and don't waste my time. After gaining the upper hand in one move, the first prince curled his lips into a sinister smile. He hooked his pinky finger at Ningyu and said sinisterly, after the third move, I'll have to do it myself. As you wish. Ningyu's eyes turned cold, and he immediately leaped. At the same time, his fist, which contained extremely violent primordial chi, appeared in front of the first prince in the blink of an eye. The iron-like fist gradually enlarged in the first prince's eyes. Hehe, this punch can't hurt me. Ouyang Yangming did not pay much attention to the fist that was slowly expanding in his pupils. After a faint smile, he took a step forward and stuck out his chest, intending to resist Ningyu's punch. You're courting death. Don't blame me. Ningyu turned to look at Old Tan, then the primordial chi in his sea of consciousness gushed out again and gathered on his fist. Oh no. First prince, retreat quickly. On the other side, Old Tan's face changed when he saw Ningyu's gaze and the violent primordial chi on Ningyu's fist. He quickly shouted in his heart, this punch is too powerful. It'll be difficult for you to block it. Oh no. Upon hearing Old Tan's words, the first prince turned around slightly with a confused look on his face. Chapter 465. Defeat Bang. Following that, a muffled sound was heard as Ouyang Yangming fell backward. This time, Ouyang Yangming was not so lucky. When he was repelled, Elder Tan seemed to have suffered a serious injury as well, so he did not go forward to receive him. Bang! Without Elder Tan's help, Ouyang Yangming directly had intimate contact with the private room's wall. Poochie! Ouyang Yangming spat out a mouthful of blood, and his aura became rather weak, and he was extremely pale. First prince, 3 moves have passed. After defeating Ouyang Yangming, Ningyu remarked, I didn't waste your time. Puff. Ouyang Yangming spat out another mouthful of blood when he heard Ningyu, and he trembled with rage. Ningyu, those 3 moves don't count. Let's do it again. Ouyang Yangming stood up with difficulty and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. A loss is a loss. Go back and think about why you lost today. At that instant, Ouyang Ba said in a deep voice. Ouyang Ming's defeat had obviously exceeded Ouyang Ba's expectation. After all, Ouyang Yangming was not fighting alone. He had Elder Tan, who was at the early stage of yin-yang state, behind him. If Ningyu could defeat Ouyang Yangming, did that not mean that even Elder Tan was no match for him? Although he was extremely shocked in his heart, since Ningyu had won the duel, it was inappropriate for Ouyang Ba to say anything. He could only say in a loud voice, Ningyu is the winner of this duel. Subsequently, Ouyang Ba swept his gaze across Ouyang Yuan and Li Tongtian. Up until now, the only martial artists in the room who had not fought with Ningyu were the 2 of them. Ouyang Yuan could basically be eliminated. If Ningyu wanted to defeat him, it would be effortless. Li Tongtian is very strong. Who knows, he might be able to defeat Ningyu now. Ouyang Ba's eyes darted around as he tried to come up with a countermeasure. He was trying to come up with a way for Ningyu to fight Li Tongtian. Father, I forfeit. Ouyang Yuan knew that he was no match for Ningyu, so he simply gave up. Originally, He had been worried that directly forfeiting would affect the fight for the position of Crown Prince. However, now that the first prince and the third prince had both been defeated, it would be wise for him to forfeit. Ningyu, I know you can continue to fight, but it would be unfair to you. So, you should rest for an hour. You can fight Li Tongtian after that. After Ouyang Yuan gave up, Ouyang Ba raised his eyebrows and said in a low voice, "Let me know if you have any requests. I'll try my best to fulfill them. I don't need to rest." As soon as Ouyang Ba finished his words, Ningyu shook his head and said calmly, "You don't need to rest." Ouyang Ba frowned slightly, not knowing what Ningyu was up to. Could it be that Ningyu was so confident in himself? He could defeat Li Tongtian without resting. One had to know that Li Tongtian was extremely powerful. Even at his peak, Ningyu would have to go through a lot of trouble to defeat Li Tongtian. Now that Ningyu was not at his peak, defeating Li Tongtian would be even more difficult. "You think you can defeat me without resting? You're quite arrogant." Li Tongtian revealed a look of displeasure. Ningyu's words were obviously not giving him face, which made him very angry. Initially, he had planned to use only 80% of his strength to fight Ningyu. In his opinion, it would be difficult for Ningyu to recover to his peak within an hour. Even if he won against Ningyu who was not at his peak, it would be an unfair victory. Now, Li Tongtian had changed his mind. He wanted to use his full strength to let Ningyu know how powerful he was. "That's right, I don't need to rest." Ningyu nodded. Following that, Ningyu said something that shocked the crowd. "Because I give up." Whoosh. As soon as Ningyu finished speaking, almost all the martial artists in the spacious second Yuan booth, including Ouyang Ba and Li Tongtian, were in disbelief. Give up. If this was said by someone else, it might not cause too much of a commotion. However, when it was said by Ningyu, it was a little unbelievable. Could it be that Ningyu was injured, or did Ningyu know that he was no match for Li Tongtian? However, judging from Ningyu's performance, it did not look like he was injured, nor did it look like he was no match for Li Tongtian. However, why did Ningyu give up? A series of questions appeared in the minds of the crowd. Finally, Li Tongtian took a step forward and said, "Ningyu, what do you mean by this?" Li Tongtian was very angry. He felt that he had lost face by using such a method to win the final martial arts assessment. The sandpiper and the clam fight. Ningyu did not answer Li Tongtian directly. Instead, he came to his side with his back facing Ouyang Ba and the rest. His mouth was slightly open. Lip reading. At this moment, Ningyu used lip reading to communicate with Li Tongtian. Ouyang Ba was very strong, and even his soul power was extremely strong. If he were to use soul telepathy now, he might be discovered by Ouyang Ba. Therefore, Ningyu decided to use lip reading. No matter how strong Ouyang Ba was, without seeing Ningyu's mouth, it was hard for him to know what Ningyu was talking about. Li Tongtian was no fool. The moment Ningyu opened his mouth, he realized the severity of the problem. Taking a deep breath, Li Tongtian turned around and stood side by side with Ningyu. He said in a deep voice, "The fisherman reaps the benefit. When we go to the ice manor later, are you my friend or foe?" Ningyu asked. "Friend, not foe," Li Tongtian said. After getting a definite answer from Li Tongtian, Ningyu smiled and did not continue speaking. Ningyu had always felt that Li Tongtian was not simple. His martial arts skills were no weaker than his own. If they were to continue fighting, it was hard to tell who would win. Since he did not know if he could defeat Li Tongtian, it was better to have one more ally than one more enemy. Since Ningyu has given up, the final winner of the martial arts assessment is Li Tongtian. Ouyang Ba's gaze lingered on Ningyu for a second, before shifting to Li Tongtian and saying, "I've said it before, no matter the winner of the martial arts assessment or the winner of the alchemy assessment, they can enter the ice mansion unconditionally to cultivate for a day and a night. Now, I hereby announce that both Ningyu and Li Tongtian can enter the ice manor unconditionally to cultivate for a day and a night." Whoosh. Although they knew that the winners of both assessments could enjoy such a great treatment, the crowd was still shocked when Ouyang Ba made the announcement. Cultivating for a day and a night in the ice manor, This treatment was truly heaven-defying. The rest of the cultivators can leave Tianyuan Tower. Ning Yu and Li Tongtian, follow me to the Ice Manor. Ouyang Ba waved his hand. Although it seemed like a casual statement, it was actually unquestionable. Your Majesty, can you wait for a moment? Ning Yu asked hesitantly. Sure. Ouyang Ba was about to leave, but he stopped when he heard Ning Yu's words. Thank you. After expressing his gratitude, Ning Yu came to Ouyang Yuan's side and said in a deep voice, Sixth Prince, I'll leave Fengzi and Lu Wei to you for the time being. I hope you can ensure their safety. No problem. As long as I'm here, I guarantee nothing will happen to them. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.